Chapter 21. Duryodhana's Rage and Desperation. The battlefield of Kurukshetra was soaked in crimson, but no sight struck the Kauravas harder than the fall of Karna, their champion, their son. The king's anguish. In the stillness of twilight, Duryodhana stood over Karna's body. His face was pale, his armor broken, but his eyes burned with a grief so fierce it turned to rage. "You swore you would not fall," Duryodhana muttered, his hands trembling. "You promised me victory. Without you, what is left for me? What is left of this war?" He pressed his forehead against his fallen friend's chest, the cold silence answering him. For the first time in his life, Duryodhana felt truly alone. The cry of revenge. Rising to his feet, Duryodhana's grief hardened into fury. He turned to the remaining Kaurava soldiers, his voice thunderous over the field. "Hear me, warriors of he roared. "Our greatest has fallen, struck down by trickery, by fate, by the cruel hand of destiny. But I swear to you, this war is not lost. Not while I draw breath. Not while my heart beats with vengeance." The weary Kaurava soldiers raised their weapons weakly, their eyes hollow. Yet Duryodhana's fury rekindled a flicker of fire among them. They shouted in unison, though their voices trembled, for Karna, the council of Shakuni. That night, in the Kaurava camp, Shakuni, the cunning uncle, approached his grieving nephew. His eyes gleamed with both sorrow and calculation. "Duryodhana," he said softly, "do not let despair cloud your mind. Karna is gone, yes, but you are still king, still heir to As long as you stand, the throne stands. We must fight until the last drop of blood." Duryodhana clenched his fists. "What throne, uncle? Without Karna, without Bhishma, without Dronawat, do I rule? Corpses, ruins?" But Shakuni leaned closer, his voice like poison in the dark. "Then let your throne be vengeance. Let your crown be wrath. The Pandavas must not celebrate while you breathe. Tomorrow, we strike with what remains. Tomorrow, we show them the fury of a king who has nothing left to lose." The Pandavas' unease. Across the field, in the Pandava camp, silence hung heavy. Arjuna sat apart, consumed by grief over Karna, while Yudhishthira brooded in sorrow. Bhima, restless, muttered angrily, "Duryodhana will not yield. The snake has lost its fangs, yet still it hisses. He will strike tomorrow, mark my words." Krishna, ever calm, nodded, "Yes. Desperation makes men dangerous. Duryodhana fights now, not for victory, but for pride. Beware, for such men can burn the world in their fall." Duryodhana's rally. At dawn, Duryodhana gathered the remnants of his forces. The army that once thundered like the ocean was now reduced to a stream, but his presence made them stand tall once more. "Brothers in arms," Duryodhana cried, his voice cutting through the morning mist. "The Pandavas believe we are broken. They believe our spirit has died with but hear me. Better to fall in battle with honor than live in shame. Will you let your king fight alone?" A ragged cheer rose. Exhausted though they were, the Kauravas drew their swords and spears. For Duryodhana, for loyalty, for the last spark of pride, they would fight. Krishna's warning. Back among the Pandavas, Krishna spoke gravely. "Today will be the final storm. Duryodhana's pride will not let him surrender. But remember, when cornered, even a dying lion fights with deadly strength. Do not underestimate him." Bhima slammed his mace into the ground. "Let him come. I have sworn since childhood to shatter his thigh. Tomorrow, that oath will be fulfilled." Arjuna, however, remained silent. His thoughts still lingered on Karna. He feared that in killing his brother, he had unleashed something darker, a wrath in Duryodhana that might drag them all into ruin. Duryodhana's desperation. As the sun rose, the two armies clashed once more. The Kauravas fought with the fury of the doomed, cutting down Pandava warriors with reckless abandon. Duryodhana himself was a storm, his mace sweeping through the battlefield, scattering enemies like leaves. His eyes blazed, his voice roared, and for a moment it seemed as though he might indeed turn the tide. Komi, Pandavas, he bellowed, face me. If Karna has fallen, let me join him with honor. But I will not go quietly. I will drag you all into the abyss with me. Bhima's challenge. Hearing his roar, Bhima stepped forward, mace in hand, his rage as fierce as Duryodhana. Bhima shouted across the field, your time has come. Too long have you spread poison, too long have you mocked Dharma. Today, I end this war, and I end you. Duryodhana sneered, though his eyes glistened with fury. Come then, Bhima, let us see whose mace shatters, whose body. If I must fall, I will fall in glory, not in shadows. The soldiers on both sides stepped back, for they knew this duel would decide the fate of the war. The ground shook as Bhima and Duryodhana faced each other, two titans with nothing but hate and destiny between them. Closing scene. The sun glared overhead, as if the heavens themselves leaned down to watch. Duryodhana raised his mace high, his body burning with rage and desperation. Bhima mirrored him, his arms tense with years of vengeance. In that moment, the battlefield fell silent, thousands of eyes fixed on the duel that would determine the fate of kingdoms. And then they charged. Chapter 22. The Duel of Bhima and Duryodhana. The air was tense, heavy with silence. On the battlefield of Kurukshetra, the armies paused, as if time itself held its breath. Two titans stood facing one another. Duryodhana, king of the Kauravas, his body gleaming with armor, his mace gripped with the fury of desperation, and Bhima, the second Pandava, his muscles taut, his weapon clutched with the rage of a vow sworn long ago. The gathering of witnesses. The sun blazed overhead, casting long shadows across the field. Soldiers from both sides circled at a distance, unwilling to intervene. Even the gods were said to lean from the heavens, their eyes fixed upon this final duel. Krishna, watching from the Pandava ranks, whispered to Arjuna, "This is no ordinary fight. It is the culmination of decades of hatred, jealousy, and destiny. The world itself will shake when their weapons clash." Arjuna nodded solemnly. One carries the pride of a king, the other the weight of an oath. Neither will hold back. The roar of the king. Duryodhana stepped forward, spinning his mace with a roar that echoed across the battlefield. "Bhima," he shouted, "all my life, you and your brothers have sought to humiliate me, to strip me of my birthright. But today, I will show you who is the true heir of House. My mace will shatter your skull, and with your fall, your brothers' dreams of victory will die." Bhima laughed, the sound rumbling like thunder. "Duryodhana, do you not remember? From childhood, I swore to break you, to crush the thigh that strutted with arrogance, to end the poison you spread across this land. Today, that oath shall be fulfilled." The first clash, with a primal roar, they charged. Mace met mace in an explosion of sound so loud it rattled the earth. Sparks flew as iron struck iron, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. Each blow was a storm. Duryodhana's strikes were precise, trained under the greatest masters, his form honed to perfection. Bhima's, in contrast, were raw power, fueled by the fire of vengeance and the strength of 1,000 battles. The soldiers gasped as the two warriors clashed again and again, their weapons blurring in the air, their roars echoing like thunder. The dance of titans. For hours they fought, circling, striking, dodging. Sweat poured down their faces, blood stained their armor, yet neither yielded. Duryodhana fought like a man possessed, each strike fueled by the grief of losing Karna, Bhishma, and Drona. His mace whistled through the air, narrowly missing Bhima's skull, smashing craters into the earth. Bhima absorbed the blows with grim determination, his eyes locked on his foe. Every time his mace struck, it was as if years of humiliation, exile, and injustice were channeled into his arm. The crowd swayed with each clash, their hearts pounding with every near strike. Krishna's warning. At one point, Bhima staggered, nearly falling as Duryodhana's mace clipped his shoulder. Gasps erupted from the Pandava ranks. Yudhishthira cried out, "Bhima, beware. Do not underestimate his skill. Duryodhana is unmatched with the mace." But Krishna placed a hand on Yudhishthira's arm. His eyes glowed with calm certainty. "Do not fear. Bhima carries not just skill, but destiny. Yet remember, sometimes Dharma requires bending the rules, for adharma cannot always be defeated by righteousness alone." His words hinted at the choice Bhima would soon face. The breaking point. As the duel dragged on, Duryodhana's confidence grew. With a sudden surge, he swung his mace low, smashing into Bhima's side. Bhima roared in pain, stumbling back. The Kaurava soldiers erupted in cheers. Victory to the king. But Bhima's eyes burned brighter than ever. He straightened, blood dripping down his body, and lifted his mace high. "Is that all, Duryodhana? You cannot break me. You will never break me." With renewed fury, Bhima pressed forward, his blows raining down like thunderbolts. Duryodhana met them with equal ferocity, but each strike pushed him back, inch by inch. Krishna's signal. As the duel reached its height, Krishna subtly raised his hand, signaling to Bhima. His eyes were grave, his voice carrying only to Bhima's ears. "Remember your vow, Bhima. Remember how Duryodhana mocked Draupadi, striking his thigh in arrogance. Strike there, fulfill your oath, and end this war." Bhima's chest heaved. He knew that striking below the waist was against the code of mace combat, against the warrior's honor. But his vow burned hotter than the laws of war. His fury demanded justice. The fatal blow. With a roar that shook the heavens, Bhima swung his mace low, faster than the eye could follow. It struck Duryodhana's thigh with a sickening crack. Bone shattered, flesh tore, and the mighty king screamed as he fell to the ground, writhing in agony. The battlefield erupted. The Kauravas howled in despair. The Pandavas cheered in triumph. Bhima stood over his fallen foe, chest heaving, eyes blazing. Do you remember when you laughed at Draupadi, slapping your thigh in mockery? Today, your arrogance is broken, as I swore it would be. The aftermath. Duryodhana lay in the dust, his body broken, his pride shattered. His eyes glared up at Bhima with hatred and despair. You broke the rules." He gasped, his voice choked with pain. "Even in victory, you Pandavas betrayed Dharma." Bhima turned away, his vow fulfilled. But in Duryodhana's eyes, the fire of defiance still burned, a flame that would not die even in defeat. Krishna whispered softly, almost to himself, "The war is nearly over. But Duryodhana's pride will not fade. Even in his fall, his spirit may yet bring sorrow." The sun began to set, casting a blood-red glow over Kurukshetra. The duel was done. The vow was fulfilled. Yet the echoes of that strike would haunt the world for ages to come. Chapter 23. The Fall of Duryodhana. The battlefield of Kurukshetra was silent. The clash of steel, the cries of warriors, the roar of Kongsaw had faded into a mournful stillness. The war was ending, but its shadow still lingered over the land. In the center of the desolate field, Duryodhana, the once proud king of the Kauravas, lay broken. His thighs shattered by Bhima's fateful blow, his body was racked with pain. Yet his spirit unyielding, defiance still clung stubbornly to life. The king in the dust, Duryodhana's eyes burned with rage as he gazed at the setting sun. His breaths were ragged, his armor dented, his crown fallen to the dust. But even in defeat, his pride remained unbroken. They call themselves victorious, yet they struck me like cowards, he spat bitterly. The Pandavas claimed Dharma, but they shattered it with their own hands. Even broken, I am greater than they will ever be. Blood trickled down his lips as he tried to move, but pain gripped him like chains. He dragged himself slowly, inch by inch, across the battlefield, leaving a trail of crimson behind him. His destination was the cool waters of a nearby lake, where reeds swayed gently in the evening breeze. There, half submerged in water, he found a moment's relief. The wounds burned less, the weight of his body eased. His reflection in the rippling water looked back at him, a king, fallen, yet still proud. The loyal three. As night descended, three figures emerged from the darkness. They were the last loyal warriors of the Kaurava Ashwatthama, the fiery son of Drona, Kripa, the wise yet weary preceptor, and Kritavarma, the seasoned Yadava warrior. They approached cautiously, their faces shadowed with grief. When they saw their king, broken and bleeding, their hearts tightened. Ashwatthama whispered, falling to his knees. His eyes burned with fury and sorrow. The Pandavas have wronged you. Striking below the waist is no victory, is treachery. Duryodhana's lips curled into a faint smile. My friends, you came. Do not mourn me. Even broken, I remain king. The Pandavas may think they have won, but what glory lies in a victory born of dishonor. Kripa bowed his head. Great king, you fought like no other. The world will remember your courage. Even the gods bore witness to your duel. But your body is failing. The war is lost. What would you have us do? The passing of pride. Duryodhana lifted his head with great effort, his eyes glowing in the moonlight. The Pandavas rejoice now, but their path will not be free of sorrow. Remember, this victory built on betrayal is cursed. Krishna guided their hands, and Dharma was twisted to serve their cause. Let the world judge who was truly righteous. He coughed, blood spilling from his lips, but his voice hardened. I have no regrets. I lived as a king, I fought as a king, and I will die as a king. No Pandava will ever erase my name. Ashwatthama clenched his fists. His heart boiled with rage. Then let me avenge you, Lord. Let me strike terror into their hearts, even as they sleep. The war may be over, but vengeance need not die with it. Duryodhana's eyes gleamed at the words, a faint fire rekindling within him. Yes, Ashwatthama, you are the flame that will burn after I am gone. If your heart thirsts for vengeance, unleash it. The night is yours. The oath of Ashwatthama. Ashwatthama rose, his face shadowed with fury. By my father, Drona, by my honor as a warrior, I swear that before the night ends, the Pandavas will taste despair. Their children will scream, their legacy will burn, and they will know that even in death, Duryodhana's will lives on. Kripa frowned deeply. Ashwatthama, beware. Such vengeance strays far from Dharma. To strike sleeping men, to harm the innocent, this is the path of destruction. But Duryodhana only smiled through his pain, his voice a broken whisper. Let Dharma burn, if it must. The Pandavas shattered it first. Do what I could not. Let my enemies drown in grief, as I now drown in my blood. Ashwathama placed his hand upon Duryodhana's, his vow sealed. The fire of vengeance had been passed from king to warrior. The king's last breath, the night deepened, and the stars shone cold above. Duryodhana's breaths grew shallow. The once mighty warrior who had defied fate itself was now fading into silence. My friends, the kingdom may be lost, but my pride remains unbroken. With those words, his eyes closed, his body stilled. The last breath of Duryodhana, son of Dhritarashtra, left him beneath the silent sky. The lake's waters rippled softly, carrying away the final warmth of a fallen king. The silence after the storm. Ashwatthama stood tall, his face twisted with grief and wrath. He is gone, but his vengeance shall live through me. Kripa and Kritavarma exchanged grim glances. They knew what Ashwatthama intended, but they also knew they could not restrain him. The curse of Kurukshetra was not yet complete. The three warriors disappeared into the darkness, leaving the broken body of their king behind. The battlefield was silent once more, but an unseen storm was about to rise. For though the war had ended, the night of Ashwathama's vengeance was only beginning. Chapter 24. The Night of Ashwatthama's Revenge. The moon hung cold and pale above Kurukshetra. The battlefield was silent, but silence did not mean peace. It was the silence of exhaustion, of the dead, of the world holding its breath after 18 days of slaughter. Among the shadows, three figures moved swiftly. Ashwatthama, his heart consumed by rage, Kripa, ever the voice of reason, and Kritavarma, grim and watchful. Their king, Duryodhana, lay lifeless, but his final command burned in Ashwatthama's mind like fire. The Pandavas must suffer as I have suffered. Their victory must turn to ashes. The restless fury. As they reached the edge of the Pandava camp, Ashwatthama halted. His eyes glowed with a strange, almost inhuman fury. Look at them, he hissed, pointing to the rows of tents where fires burned low. They sleep peacefully, thinking the war is won, but tonight, their joy will become grief. Their children, their warriors, none shall see the dawn. Kripa laid a hand on his shoulder. Ashwatthama, listen. The war is over. Enough blood has been spilled. To strike sleeping men, to harm innocents, it is at. Do not stain your soul with such sin. But Ashwatthama shook him off, his voice trembling with fury. Did Bhima follow Dharma when he struck Duryodhana below the waist? Did Arjuna follow Dharma when Krishna guided his every move? Did Yudhishthira follow Dharma when deceit won them the dice game? Dharma has already fallen. Tonight, I will end their line forever. Kritavarma said nothing. His face was hard, his silence an unspoken acceptance of the horror to come. Invocation of power. Ashwatthama closed his eyes and sat upon the ground. He entered deep meditation, summoning the divine power that slumbered within him. As the son of Drona, disciple of great sages, he wielded knowledge few could comprehend. He whispered ancient mantras, calling upon Mahadeva, the god Shiva himself. The earth trembled, shadows deepened, and a spectral radiance filled the night. From the darkness, a colossal figure of Shiva appeared in spirit form, towering and terrible, his eyes like burning coals. Around him swirled legions of ghoulish spirits, demons, and night creatures summoned to aid The young warrior bowed. Lord of destruction, grant me strength. Tonight, I avenge my king, my father, and my honor. Shiva's gaze fell upon him, and with a silent blessing, the god merged into Ashwatthama's being. His eyes blazed like fire, his aura dark and unstoppable. The massacre begins. With a roar, Ashwatthama charged into the Pandava camp. The soldiers of the Pandavas, weary from battle and fast asleep, never stirred. The first tents went up in flames as Ashwatthama struck, his sword slashing, his arrows flying like venom. Cries of terror filled the night as men woke to fire and steel, only to be cut down in confusion. Ashwatthama thundered, his voice carrying across the camp like the roar of death. None could stop him. He moved like a storm, guided by Shiva's destructive power. The guards fell, the warriors died in their sleep, and the earth turned red once more. The slaughter of the innocent. But Ashwatthama's fury was not sated with soldiers alone. He sought out the tents of the Pandavas' heirs, the sons of Draupadi, born to carry on the Pandava line. There, in the dark, the 5 young men slept peacefully, dreaming of the future they would never see. Ashwatthama's heart pounded, his face twisted with hate. He raised his sword high, and in one merciless stroke, he cut down the sons of his enemies. Their blood mingled with the earth, their dreams silenced forever. The camp shook with screams, with fire, with chaos, but no one could match Ashwatthama's fury. The massacre continued until the night was choked with smoke and the dead lay in heaps. The departure, when dawn approached, the Pandava camp was no more. Ashwatthama stood among the burning ruins, his sword dripping with blood, his body trembling with rage and exhaustion. Kripa and Kritavarma rejoined him, their faces pale with horror. Kripa whispered, "What have you done, You have slain the innocent. This sin will haunt you beyond lifetimes." Ashwatthama only laughed, a bitter, broken laugh. "Innocent? There are no innocents in war. The Pandavas destroyed my father, my king, my kin. Tonight, I destroyed theirs." Without another word, the 3 men turned from the smoldering camp and vanished into the forest. The dawn of grief. As the sun rose, the Pandavas returned to their camp. What they found was horror beyond words. Tents burned, warriors slain, the earth blackened with ash. Then came the greatest blow of all. Within the ruins, they discovered the lifeless bodies of Draupadi. Draupadi's cries pierced the morning sky, her grief immeasurable. The Pandavas stood frozen, their victory turned to ashes. Bhima's fists trembled with rage. Arjuna's heart burned. Yudhishthira bowed his head, struck with despair. The war was won, but at what cost? Ashwatthama's vengeance had left them hollow, their triumph poisoned by sorrow. And thus, the night of revenge sealed the fate of Kurukshetra forever. Chapter 25. Draupadi's Vow of Justice. The dawn broke heavy and gray over Kuruk. Smoke still curled from the ruins of the Pandava camp, carrying with it the stench of fire and blood. But worse than the sight of burnt tents or lifeless warriors was the unbearable silence within Draupadi's tent. There, upon a simple cot, lay the 5 young princes, the sons of the Pandavas, and Draupadi, cut down in their youth, their faces pale, their futures stolen. Draupadi knelt beside them, her body trembling, her hair undone, her garments stained with ash. Her cries were like daggers, piercing the hearts of all who heard. "My sons, my children, why has the world turned so cruel?" The wound of a mother. The Pandavas stood around her, their eyes dark with grief. Yudhishthira's lips quivered, but no words came. Arjuna clenched his fists until his knuckles turned white. Bhima growled low in his throat, his anger boiling like a storm. Nakula and Sahadeva, silent as stone, wept openly, unable to bear the sight. At last, Draupadi lifted her head, her gaze fierce, despite her tears. Her eyes burned not only with sorrow, but with fire, the fire of vengeance. She looked to her husbands, her voice sharp as steel. You are warriors. You are sons of Dharma. Will you let this crime go unpunished? Will you let Ashwatthama walk free after slaughtering innocents in their sleep? Your own blood, your own sons. Her words struck them like arrows. None could answer. Draupadi rose to her feet, her grief transforming into resolve. I swear upon the spirits of my children, upon my honor, upon the very earth itself, Ashwatthama will not escape justice. If you are truly Pandavas, if you are truly protectors of Dharma, you will bring him before me, alive and bound, to face the mother whose heart he has destroyed. Her voice shook the camp like thunder. Even in her sorrow, Draupadi's vow became the fuel of destiny. Bhima's fury, Bhima, ever the most fiery of the brothers, could no longer contain his rage. He slammed his mace upon the ground, the earth cracking beneath its weight. Yes, Draupadi, he roared. By the blood of my brothers, by the fire of my soul, I will not rest until I drink Ashwatthama's blood. He will beg for mercy, but I shall crush his skull like I crushed Duryodhana. Arjuna placed a hand upon Bhima's arm, his eyes sharp. No, Bhima, this is not only about vengeance. Draupadi has spoken clearly. Ashwatthama must be captured alive and brought before her. That is our duty now. We will hunt him down, but we will not kill him in haste. His punishment shall come through dark. Bhima growled, but nodded, his chest heaving. Krishna speaks. From the shadows of the tent came the calm yet commanding voice of Krishna. He stepped forward, his eyes deep with sorrow, yet unshaken, for he knew this moment had been written by fate. Draupadi's grief is greater than any wound upon this earth, Krishna said. The slayer of her sons must be brought to her feet, bound in chains. Yet, remember, Ashwatthama is no ordinary foe. He carries within him the power of Shiva himself, the fury of destruction. To face him is to face death itself. Arjuna bowed his head. So be it. No matter the cost, I will subdue him. By Gandiva's bow, I swear it. Krishna's gaze grew stern. Then prepare yourselves, Pandava. Tonight, we ride into the forest. We will track Ashwatthama, and their fate will decide the end of this war. Draupadi's final plea. Before they left, Draupadi stepped forward once more. Her tears had dried, but her face was set in stone. She raised her right hand to the heavens and declared, if Ashwatthama escapes, then let the gods themselves abandon me. Let the earth swallow me whole. My children's blood cries for justice, and justice they shall have. Bring him to me, my lords. Bind him as a beast. Only then shall my heart know rest. Her words echoed through the camp, binding the Pandavas to their duty. The hunt begins. As night fell, the Pandavas armed themselves once more. Arjuna strung the Gandiva, its bowstring thrumming like thunder. Bhima hefted his mace, eager for battle. Nakula and Sahadeva sharpened their swords, silent but resolute. Krishna took the reins of their chariot, his eyes fixed upon destiny. They rode into the forest, the torches blazing, their hearts burning with grief and wrath. Ashwatthama was out there, hiding in the shadows, his soul twisted by rage and Shiva's power. But now, the hunt had begun, and no force in heaven or earth could stop the vow of Draupadi from being fulfilled. Chapter 26. The hunt for Ashwatthama. The forest beyond Kurukshetra was cloaked in shadow. A cold wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the scent of blood and ashes. The moon hung pale and watchful above, its light filtering through the branches like silver blades. Into that haunted wilderness rode the Pandavas and Krishna. Their chariot wheels crushed the fallen leaves, and the fire of their torches flickered in the gloom. But no torch could pierce the darkness that awaited them. For Ashwatthama, son of Drona, had vanished into the night like a phantom. The trail of death. Arjuna, his bow Gandiva strung and ready, scanned the ground with sharp eyes. He fled in haste. He said, "Look, broken branches, footprints pressed deep into the soil. He carries the weight of his guilt, and it slows him." Bhima snarled, "Good. The slower he runs, the sooner I shall crush him." But Krishna raised his hand, silencing them. His gaze pierced the night, far beyond mortal sight. "Do not mistake haste for weakness," he warned. "Ashwatthama is not fleeing from fear. He retreats to prepare. He carries the jewel of power upon his forehead, blessed by Shiva himself. If cornered, he will unleash devastation greater than you have yet seen." The Pandavas stiffened. They remembered well the night's slaughter, the blood of innocent children staining the battlefield. None doubted Ashwatthama's ruthlessness. Still, Draupadi's vow echoed in their hearts. He must be captured. The darkness stirs. Hours passed. The deeper they went, the heavier the air became, as though the forest itself wished to strangle them. Strange cries echoed. Elves, jackals, perhaps spirits. Then the trees began to twist unnaturally, their branches writhing like serpents. Nakula drew his sword. This is no ordinary forest. He weaves sorcery to frighten us. Krishna nodded calmly. Yes, Ashwatthama calls upon his master, the Lord of Destruction. Beware, for every shadow may strike, and every whisper may kill. Suddenly, a gust of wind extinguished their torches. Darkness swallowed them whole. From the void came a roar deep, monstrous, unnatural. Out of the trees lunged shapes of fire and smoke. Beasts with blazing eyes, conjured by Ashwatthama's spell. Battle in the forest. Bhima leaped forward with a roar, swinging his mace. The ground cracked as he smashed one fiery beast into dust. Nakula and Sahadeva fought back to back, their blades flashing in the gloom, striking down the phantoms that lunged from every side. Arjuna loosed arrow after arrow, each shaft glowing like lightning. His Gandiva sang, and every note was death. The illusions screamed and dissolved into smoke. Krishna, unmoved, raised his hand. With a word of power, his Sudarshana chakra shimmered briefly above his palm, radiating divine light. At its glow, the forest trembled, and many of Ashwatthama's conjurations scattered like leaves in a storm. But even as the Pandavas fought, a cold laugh echoed through the trees. The voice of Ashwatthama. The voice hissed, "You hunt me like dogs, yet it is I who lead you. You want me alive, foolish. I carry within me the fury of Shiva, and no chain forged by man can bind me." Arjuna raised his bow. "Coward, you kill children in their sleep and hide in the shadows. Face us as a warrior, if you dare." The forest fell silent. Then, ahead of them, a glow appeared, pulsing, alive. It was the jewel of Ashwatthama, shining upon his brow like a burning star. The clash of destinies. Ashwatthama stood upon a rocky outcrop, his eyes wild, his body trembling with rage and exhaustion. His hair was matted, his armor stained with blood, but the jewel blazed with unearthly light, filling him with unnatural power. "You call me coward," he spat. "I avenged my father, slain by your deceit. I avenged the Kauravas, slaughtered by your greed. I slew your sons, Draupadi's sons, to break your hearts as you broke ours. And now you dare to hunt me. Come, then come, and face my wrath." Bhima charged with a roar, but Krishna's hand shot out. "Wait," he commanded. "This is no mere battle of strength. Ashwatthama is Shiva's chosen. Only wisdom and restraint will prevail." Arjuna stepped forward, his bow glowing with divine light. His voice rang clear. "You will not escape. By Draupadi's vow and by Dharma's command, I will bind you. Surrender now, or face the justice of heaven." Ashwatthama laughed, a sound like breaking bones. "Then, face me, Arjuna. Face the weapon of Brahma itself." He raised his hand, and in it gathered a terrible light, the beginnings of the Brahmashira Astra, a weapon said to destroy the very world. The earth shook. The sky darkened. Trees burst into flame at its presence. Even the gods trembled as Ashwatthama invoked the forbidden weapon. The moment of decision, the Pandavas staggered at the blast of its power. Draupadi's words rang in Arjuna's mind. Bring him alive. Bind him as a beast. But how could he bind a man who wielded the weapon of the gods? Arjuna lifted Gandiva. Divine fire coursed through his arms. Krishna's voice spoke in his ear. This is the test, Partha. If you meet his weapon with your own, the world may end. You must strike not with rage, but with dharma. The air crackled with unbearable tension. One wrong choice, and the forest and all life would be consumed. Ashwatthama's scream rose above the storm. Die with your world, Pandavas. The glowing sphere of destruction surged in his hands, ready to be unleashed. Chapter 27. The Brahmashira Astra. The night trembled. The earth groaned as though it could no longer bear the weight of what was unfolding. Above the forest, the stars themselves seemed to recoil, their light fading in dread. For in Ashwatthama's hands blazed a weapon forbidden to mortals, the Brahmashira Astra, born of Brahma, capable of reducing the world to ash. The jewel on his brow flared with crimson fury. His eyes burned like a madman's, and the trees around him shriveled at the sheer heat of the astral power gathering in his palms. "What of us?" he roared, his voice breaking the silence of the universe. "I curse you, I curse your bloodlines, I curse this earth. Tonight all shall die with me." Arjuna's dilemma. Arjuna stood firm, Gandiva in his hands, but his heart wavered. His fingers itched to summon his own Brahmashira, for he too had been taught its invocation. But Krishna's voice rang in his mind like thunder. "Partha, beware. If you unleash the same weapon, their collision will burn the heavens, dry the seas, and consume every creature alive. This is not merely a duel, it is the fate of all creation." Sweat rolled down Arjuna's brow. He glanced back at Bhima, Nakula, Sahadeva, and Yudhishthira. Behind them loomed Draupadi's shadow in memory, her tear-streaked face demanding justice, but justice, not annihilation. "What then, Krishna?" Arjuna whispered, his voice raw. "How can I fight him without destroying all?" Krishna's eyes glowed serene and terrible in the darkness. "You must summon the Astra, not to destroy, but to bind. Bend its fury, channel its light, and turn it into chains instead of fire. This is your test, Arjuna. Only you, the son of Indra, can master such restraint." The summoning, Ashwatthama shrieked and hurled the weapon forward. A blazing comet erupted from his palms, tearing the night apart. The ground quaked, rivers boiled, and the very air screamed. Arjuna's heart pounded. He raised Gandiva high, calling upon every mantra Drona had once taught him, every blessing Krishna had bestowed, and the strength of his father Indra. His lips moved swiftly, uttering the sacred syllables of the Brahmashira Astra. Light erupted around, hymn-blending, searing, infinite. The two cosmic weapons hurtled through the sky, one a burning sun of destruction, the other a storm of divine fire. They raced toward each other with unstoppable force. When they collided, the heavens split apart. The cataclysm, a silence deeper than death, fell for a heartbeat. Then the explosion came. The sky turned white. The forest vanished in a storm of fire. Mountains crumbled. Rivers turned to steam. Creatures for miles screamed in terror. Even the gods in their high realms shuddered. Bhima and the others were hurled to the ground, shielding their eyes from the unbearable brilliance. Only Krishna stood unshaken, his presence a barrier against annihilation. Above them, the two astras writhed and twisted, locked in a struggle that could end existence itself. They clashed like two suns, tearing the fabric of the universe. Arjuna, Krishna called, "Now, bind it. Bend the weapon to your will." The binding of the Astra, Arjuna's arms trembled as if they bore the weight of worlds. The Brahmashira seared through his veins, urging him to destroy, to burn, to annihilate. He clenched his teeth, forcing his spirit to resist. "I will not destroy my world," he cried, his voice breaking. "I will not dishonor Draupadi's vow. I will not betray." He twisted the weapon's essence, reshaping it with sheer will. Instead of letting it explode outward, he bent its fire into chains of light. They slithered like serpents, wrapping around Ashwatthama's comet of destruction. The two forces struggled, one to annihilate, the other to restrain. The earth cracked, lightning split the heavens, but slowly, inch by inch, the destructive energy was pulled inward, its flames curling like a dying star. Ashwatthama screamed in disbelief. "Impossible. No man can bind the Brahmashira. No man." But the chains of light wound tighter, swallowing his weapon's fury, until at last the forest was silent again. The fire died, leaving only smoke and ash. Ashwatthama's fall. Ashwatthama collapsed to his knees, his jewel still burning faintly on his brow. His body shook with rage and despair. You took from me everything. My father, my honor, my cause. And still you seek to cage me like an animal." Arjuna, breathing hard, lowered his bow. His voice was steady but grim. "It was not for vengeance that I fought Ash. It was to stop you from destroying the innocent. Surrender now, for your crimes have reached beyond men, they touch the gods themselves." Ashwatthama's eyes glowed with madness. With trembling hands, he clutched the jewel upon his forehead. "If I cannot slay you, then let this cursed jewel leave me. Let it carry my pain, my fury, my fall." With a cry, he tore the jewel from his brow. Blood streamed down his face as he hurled it to the ground. The jewel lay upon the earth, still glowing with unholy light. Ashwatthama fell silent, his body broken, his spirit shattered. The silence after the storm. The forest smoldered, trees blackened, and rivers dry, but the world still stood. Slowly, the Pandavas rose, their hearts pounding in awe and relief. Bhima spat upon the ground. "I would have crushed him with my mace, but, by the gods, Arjuna, you saved us all." Yudhishthira bowed his head. "No, it was Dharma that saved us. And Krishna, who guided your hand." Krishna said nothing, but a faint smile touched his lips. The Pandavas approached the fallen Ashwatthama. His once brilliant jewel now lay dim upon the earth, stripped from his brow forever. Without it, he seemed less a warrior, more a broken man, shivering in the ashes of his hatred. Chapter 28. The Curse of Ashwatthama. The forest lay in ruin. Ashes drifted like snow across the scorched earth, the silence broken only by the crackle of dying embers. The once mighty Ashwatthama knelt in the dirt, his breath ragged, his jewel torn from his brow. Blood streaked his face, mixing with tears of fury and shame. Before him stood the Pandavas, their armor scarred, their eyes still burning with the memory of near. Yet none of them raised a hand to strike, for there was no victory in this moment, only the heavy weight of sorrow. And then Krishna stepped forward. Krishna's judgment, his presence alone, seemed to hush the very wind. His eyes glowed with the radiance of eternity, compassion and wrath, creation and destruction bound in one form. When he spoke, his voice carried not only to the ears of men, but to the soul of the earth itself. Ashwatthama, Krishna said, calm but terrible, son of Drona, you have crossed the limits of Dharma. You slew innocents in their sleep, warriors unarmed, and sought to end the very fabric of existence with your weapon. Such acts cry out not only for justice, but for judgment beyond mortal law. Ashwatthama's chest heaved as he spat, his voice hoarse. Do not speak to me of Dharma, Krishna. You who tricked and deceived, you who wove lies into the war to bring victory to your favorites. What is Dharma when it bends to your will? Krishna's eyes flashed, but he did not deny it. Instead, he stepped closer, his voice steady as stone. Yes, I bent Dharma to preserve the greater balance, but you shattered it for vengeance. There is no comparison. The curse unfolds. Ashwatthama's shoulders slumped. He was broken, but not repentant. Hatred smoldered still in his gaze. Krishna raised his hand, and the air grew heavy, as if the universe itself leaned in to witness. For your sins, Ashwatthama, I strip from you the peace of death. You shall live, but not in glory. You shall wander this earth until the end of the age, unseen, unwanted, and untouched by time. Ashwatthama's eyes widened in horror. No, not that. Slay me, Krishna. End this torment now. But Krishna's voice only grew more thunderous. You shall carry the weight of your crimes forever. The jewel you tore from your brow shall never return. Your wound shall never heal. The stench of blood will cling to you, and men will shun you as cursed. You will beg for death, but death will flee from you. The ground trembled with his words. The very sky seemed to mourn. Ashwatthama clutched at his forehead as the invisible fire of the curse burned into him. His skin grew pale, his strength withered, and his once mighty presence shrank into that of a shadow. He cried out, a sound more beast than man, echoing across the ruined forest. The reactions of the Pandavas watched in silence, awe and unease stirring within them. Bhima clenched his fists. Why not end him, Krishna? Why let him live at all? Krishna turned to him, his gaze still fierce. Death is too merciful, Bhima. His crimes deserve more than a single ending blow. They deserve eternity. Yudhishthira bowed his head, troubled. Is it not cruel to bind a man to endless suffering? Even the wicked, do they not deserve release in time? Krishna's eyes softened for a moment. This curse is not for vengeance, but for balance. His life will be a warning, his suffering a shadow upon the world, a reminder that to cross the line of Dharma brings consequences beyond death. Arjuna said nothing. His gaze lingered on Ashwatthama, torn between pity and loathing. He remembered their days of training under Drona, when Ashwatthama had been his brother in arms. Now that bond lay shattered, replaced by this ruin. The wandering outcast, Ashwatthama, staggered to his feet. His body was bent, his eyes hollow, his wound still bleeding, though no blade touched it. He looked once at the Pandavas, his lips curling in bitterness. "You may think yourselves victorious," he rasped, "but know, this your triumph is cursed. I will wander this earth, yes, but every step I take will carry the memory of my vengeance. And though my body rots, the world will never forget my name." Krishna's gaze hardened. "Go, walk the earth as the ghost of your sins. Let the ages bear witness to what you have become." With a final, hollow cry, Ashwatthama stumbled into the smoke of the ruined forest. His figure vanished into the haze, a broken man condemned to eternity. The Pandavas knew they would never see him again, yet his presence would haunt the world forever. Aftermath, silence returned once more. The Pandavas stood weary, their armor heavy, their hearts burdened. The war had ended, but its scars would never fade. Draupadi emerged from the shadows, her face pale, yet resolute. She looked at Krishna, her voice trembling. "Is justice done, Madhava?" Krishna's gaze was distant, as though seeing beyond the present moment into the endless stream of time. "Justice, Draupadi, is never simple. Ashwatthama will suffer more than any blade could bring. But peace is still far from us." The Pandavas bowed their heads, knowing the truth. For though their enemies were gone, though their vengeance was complete, the echoes of war would linger in every corner of their souls. And somewhere, in the shadows of the earth, Ashwatthama began his eternal wandering, a cursed figure, bleeding and broken, forever alive, forever alone. Chapter 29. Return to Hastinapura. The road back to Hastinapura was lined with dust and silence. The once vibrant plains, once green with harvest, now bore scars of war, burnt villages, abandoned homes, and fields where bones lay hidden beneath the soil. The Pandavas rode not in triumph, but in mourning, their procession heavy with the weight of memory. Behind them, thousands of warriors had fallen. Before them, a kingdom awaited, bereft of fathers, sons, and brothers. The procession of sorrow. When they entered the city gates, trumpets sounded, drums thundered, and the people poured into the streets. To them, the Pandavas were victors, the saviors of Hastinapura, the bringers of peace after 18 days of bloodshed. Women garlanded them with flowers, children sang praises, and the elders bowed in reverence. But for every cheer, there were tears. For every garland, there was a widow clutching the air where her husband once walked. Bhima, who had once roared with joy at battle, now walked in silence. His gaze, usually fierce, was lowered to the ground. Arjuna held his bow Gandiva across his knees, but it felt heavier than ever before. Nakula and Sahadeva kept their heads bowed, unable to meet the grieving eyes of the people. Yudhishthira sat at the head, his face pale and drawn. Though he was hailed as Dharma Raja, the king of righteousness, his heart was not at peace. For what is a king without subjects? What is victory when it is purchased with oceans of blood? The palace of the blind king. At the steps of the royal palace, the Pandavas dismounted. There stood Dhritarashtra, the blind king, leaning on Gan. His face was gaunt, his beard white as ash, his eyes empty, yet filled with fire. The Pandavas bowed before him, but the silence that followed was thick with unspoken grief. Gandhara's veil trembled as she raised her head. Her sons all, 100 were gone, slaughtered in the war. Her gaze, blindfolded, yet piercing, turned to Krishna. With a voice like thunder wrapped in sorrow, she cried, "You, O Krishna, O preserver of Dharma, you who could have stopped this war with a single word. Why did you not? Why did you let my sons perish? Why did you allow my womb to be emptied, my heart turned to stone?" Her voice cracked, echoing through the palace walls. Even the guards wept at the sound. Krishna lowered his head, his expression serene yet solemn. "O Gandhari, mother of sons, you speak the truth. I could have prevented this war, but destiny is not woven by my will alone. The greed of Duryodhana, the arrogance of your sons, the vengeance of Draupadi, the silence of Bhishma, all these threads bound the loom of fate. I am but its witness." But Gandhara's grief turned into a curse. She raised her trembling hands toward Krishna and said, "If destiny demanded this war, then let destiny also punish you. May your own clan, the Yadavas, perish in blood as mine have perished. May your laughter end in ashes as mine has." The hall fell into stunned silence. Krishna did not argue. He bowed his head, accepting the curse with calm eyes. "So be it, the Yadavas too shall fall, for no house built on pride can stand forever." Yudhishthira's torment. When Gandhari and Dhritarashtra withdrew, the Pandavas were left standing in the great hall, the crown waiting for you. But the eldest son of Pandu did not move toward it. "Brothers," he whispered, his voice breaking, "this throne feels like a seat of fire. How can I sit upon it when it rests on the bones of kin? Karna, our brother, slain by my hand. Duryodhana, felled by Bhima. The sons of Draupadi, murdered in their sleep. Is this kingship worth such a price?" Arjuna laid a hand on his shoulder. "Dharma is heavy, brother. But if not you, who shall bear it? The people need a king, not a victor, but a just ruler. If you refuse, the kingdom will fall into chaos once more." Bhima growled, his fists clenched. "We fought, we bled, we killed, because it was demanded of us. Do not dishonor their sacrifice by turning away now." Nakula and Sahadeva knelt together, their voices soft. "Elder brother, this crown is not for glory. It is for duty, and duty cannot be refused." But Yudhishthira wept. His tears fell onto the cold marble floor. Krishna's counsel. Then Krishna spoke, his voice carrying the calm weight of eternity. "O Yudhishthira, son of Dharma, listen. The throne is not a prize, it is a burden. It is not your triumph, but your penance. The kingdom does not belong to you, it belongs to the people. To rule is to serve, not to glory. Take the crown, not for yourself, but for them." Yudhishthira looked up, his eyes red but steady now. Slowly, he rose, his back straightening, as though accepting the invisible weight of the world. He nodded. "If it is penance, then I shall bear it. If it is duty, then I shall not flee." And so, with Krishna by his side, and his brothers surrounding him, Yudhishthira ascended the throne of Hastinapura. The bitter coronation. The coronation was grand, but it was no celebration. The air was heavy with both incense and sorrow. Priests chanted sacred hymns, pouring libations upon the fire. Garlands of flowers decorated the palace, yet they could not hide the black veils of widows standing in the crowd. Yudhishthira wore the crown of kingship, but his face bore no joy. Draupadi sat beside him as queen, her beauty radiant but shadowed by grief for her slain sons. The people bowed and hailed their new king. But behind every cheer lay a sob, behind every smile a memory of the fallen. Thus began the reign of Yudhishthira, not in glory but in ashes. Chapter 30, the Ashwamedha Yajna. The throne of Hastinapura had been claimed, yet its foundation trembled beneath grief. The people obeyed, the land was pacified, but the air still carried the smoke of war. To cleanse the kingdom, to establish rightful sovereignty, and to heal the wounds of fate, the sages advised Yudhishthira to perform the Ashwamedha Yajna, horse sacrifice. It was no mere ritual. It was a declaration to the world. The king who released the sacred horse would rule uncontested, unless another dared to challenge him. The release of the horse. On the morning of the ritual, the priests anointed a magnificent white stallion, its body shining like silver beneath the rising sun. Golden ornaments adorned its mane, and its hooves rang like thunder on the stone floor of the palace. The sacred horse was loosed into the open plains. Wherever it wandered, it carried the sovereignty of Hastinapura. If a king dared to stop it, battle would decide the rightful ruler. Arjuna, wielder of Gandiva, was chosen to guard the horse. By his side rode Krishna, and with them marched armies bearing the banner of the Pandava. "Brother Arjuna," said Yudhishthira before their departure, his voice heavy with both command and sorrow, "this is not a campaign for conquest. It is a journey of peace. Let the horse wander free, but if war comes, let it be only as the last resort." Arjuna bowed. "I understand, elder brother. Our weapons will remain sheathed until Dharma demands otherwise." Trials across the land. The horse roamed far and wide, from the banks of the Ganga to the distant seas. In some kingdoms, rulers welcomed it freely, bowing before Hastinapura's authority. They offered tribute gold, jewels, and herds as tokens of loyalty. But not all accepted. Some kings, proud and unyielding, barred the path of the horse. And then Arjuna's bow would sing. The battles were swift and fierce, yet, unlike the war of Kurukshetra, they were not wars of hatred. These were contests of honor, fought until victory was clear, then ended with clasped hands and shared vows. Defeated kings bowed not in bitterness but in respect, acknowledging the Pandavas' rightful rule. In each victory, Arjuna felt both strength and weariness. The clash of steel echoed the ghosts of Kurukshetra, and every arrow he loosed carried the memory of his fallen kin. The return of Arjuna. After a year of wandering, the sacred horse returned to Hastinapura, guarded by Arjuna and the victorious armies. The people gathered to witness its homecoming, garlands showering from balconies, conch shells blowing through the streets. But the glory belonged not to conquest, but to reconciliation. The kingdoms of Bharatavarsha were now united, not by fear, but by respect for the Dharma that Yudhishthira embodied. The great sacrifice. The day of the sacrifice dawned. In the heart of Hastinapura, an enormous altar was raised, stretching like a mountain of sacred wood and stone. Priests chanted mantras that filled the air with power. The horse, bathed in perfumes and garlands, stood proudly at the center. Yudhishthira approached, wearing robes of white, his crown gleaming in the firelight. His brothers stood beside him, Arjuna, still bearing Gandiva, Bhima, with his mace, Nakula, and Sahadeva, radiant in royal splendor. Draupadi stood as queen, her gaze steady despite the shadows in her heart. The rituals began. Offerings of clarified butter, grains, and incense were poured into the sacred fire. The horse was led around the altar, symbol of conquest and sovereignty. Hymns resounded, invoking the gods of heaven, the guardians of the earth, and the spirits of ancestors. Then came the final moment, the sacrifice of the horse. With solemn hands, the priests completed the rite, sending the soul of the stallion to the heavens. The flames rose high, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson. The air vibrated with a divine presence, as though the very gods were watching. The arrival of the sages, as the smoke curled into the heavens, great sages and rishis appeared, drawn by the sanctity of the Yena. Vyasa himself, the seer who had chronicled the deeds of gods and men, stepped forward. "O Yudhishthira," he said, his voice like thunder wrapped in compassion, "today you have fulfilled dharma. This Yena is not merely a right of kingship, is an offering of peace to the world, a bridge between the living and the fallen." The people wept with relief, as though the burden of war was finally lifted. Yudhishthira's inner struggle. Yet, even as the sacred fire consumed the offerings, Yudhishthira's heart was restless. He whispered to Krishna, "Why does this crown feel heavier with every ritual? Why does peace taste like ash in my mouth? Can any Yena truly wash away the blood of kin?" Krishna smiled gently, his gaze endless as the cosmos. "O son of Dharma, no fire can erase memory, no hymn can undo fate. But Yena is not for forgetting it, is for accepting. It is not the world you cleanse, but your own heart." Yudhishthira bowed his head, his eyes moist. For the first time since the war, he felt a faint stirring of peace, not joy, but acceptance. A kingdom reborn. When the Yena ended, the kingdom celebrated, not with drunken revels, but with solemn gratitude. Food was distributed to the poor, gold given to the needy, and peace declared across the land. The widows and the orphans were not forgotten. They were honored, their grief acknowledged as part of the kingdom's foundation. Thus, Hastinapura was reborn, not as a throne of conquest, but as a realm of Dharma. Chapter 31. The Curse of Time. The smoke of the Ashwamedha Yena had barely faded when shadows began to gather once more. The Pandavas had restored their kingdom, yet destiny had not finished weaving its dark threads. For beyond the walls of Hastinapura, by the shores of the western sea, a curse began to ripen. Gandhara's words, on the eve of Kurukshetra's end, Gandhari, the grieving queen of the Kauravas, had spoken words of fire to Krishna. With a heart shattered by the loss of her 100 sons, she raised her blindfolded face toward him. "Oh, Madhava," she had cried, "you could have stopped this war. With a single word, you could have spared the earth this flood of blood. Yet you stood silent, letting brothers slaughter brothers. If my sons have perished, so too shall yours. Just as my line has ended, your Yadava clan shall meet its doom, not by enemy hands, but by their own destroyed from within." Krishna had bowed to her grief, accepting her curse with serene silence. For he knew that no curse could change what was already written in the loom of time. The Yadavas in Dvaraka, years passed, and the mighty Yadava clan, lords of the city of Dvaraka, grew restless in their prosperity. Warriors, who had once fought alongside Krishna, now gave themselves to revelry and pride. Their strength was unmatched, their arrogance unbound. Whispers spread, "No enemy dares challenge us. Who can destroy the Yadavas?" But arrogance is the seed of ruin, the jest of the princes. One day, the young princes of the Yadavas, mischievous and heedless of consequence, played a cruel prank. They dressed one among them as a pregnant woman, tying cloth around his waist. Laughing, they approached a gathering of sages. "O holy men," they mocked, "you are wise and all-seeing. Tell us, will this woman bear a son or a daughter?" The sages' eyes blazed with wrath. They saw through the deceit, and their voices thundered with prophecy. "This trick you play shall be your doom. From this false womb shall be born an iron bolt, sharp and deadly. With it, your race shall destroy itself." Fear chilled the laughter of the princes. The next morning, the prophecy came true. An iron mace was found where the cloth had been tied. Attempts to escape fate, the Yadavas, terrified, rushed to Krishna. They begged him to undo the curse. Krishna took the iron bolt in his hands, his gaze calm but heavy. "What is destined cannot be unmade," he said softly. "Yet the path may be shaped." He ordered the mace to be ground into fine powder and cast into the sea. The fragments sank into the waves, where they were swallowed by the sands. Only a single shard, sharp as a spearhead, remained intact. It, too, was thrown into the waters. The Yadavas sighed in relief, thinking the danger had passed. But fate is patient. The festival by the sea. Time moved on, and the curse ripened like fruit on a dying tree. One spring, the Yadavas gathered for a festival by the sea. Wine flowed in golden cups, music thundered, and warriors drank until laughter turned to rage. Old quarrels resurfaced, pride ignited like dry grass. Drunken words became insults, insults became blows. And, as if summoned by destiny, reeds sprouted from the sands, by the shore reeds grown, from the powdered iron of the cursed mace. The reeds hardened in their hands, sharp as spears, unbreakable as steel. In madness, the Yadavas seized them, striking one another down. The slaughter of the Yadavas, brothers slew brothers, fathers slew sons. The beach ran red with blood, as the mighty Yadava race tore itself apart. Satyaki, wielder of the plow, fell. Kritavarma, warrior of Kurukshetra, was struck down. Noble princes, fierce generals, and countless warriors perished beneath the cursed reeds. The prophecy of Gandhari unfolded with merciless precision, and amid the chaos stood Krishna, silent and unmoving, watching the destruction of his people. Krishna's silence. Arjuna, far away in Hastinapura, felt a tremor in his heart. He knew something irreversible was happening. In Dvarka, Krishna closed his eyes. He had guided kings, ended wars, and upheld Dharma. Yet even he, the Eternal One, did not resist the wheel of time. "This," he whispered, "is the curse fulfilled. Not Gandhari's alone, but the destiny of all who live. For even the strongest must bow before time." The ocean roared as if mourning, swallowing the cries of the dying. By the day's end, the Yadavas were no more, their glory extinguished by their own hands. Chapter 32. The Passing of Krishna. The blood of the Yadavas had soaked into the sand. Their cries had faded into the endless roar of the sea. Only silence remained in Dvaraka, broken cities and corpses lying under the weight of destiny. Krishna, the eternal charioteer, the voice of Dharma, walked alone upon the shore. His eyes, once radiant with playful mischief, now held the stillness of one who has seen the end of all things. The last walk, leaving behind the ruins of his people, Krishna turned from the sea and walked into the forest. Each step felt both mortal and divine, for though he was Vishnu incarnate, his human form had reached its appointed end. "The wheel has turned," he whispered to himself. "The age of heroes is done. Now begins the march into darkness, the Kali Yuga." He did not grieve for himself, nor even for Krishna had always known that time devours all. Yet there was a weight upon his heart, a farewell that lingered unspoken. The hunter in the forest. In that forest dwelled a hunter named J. Born of simple life, he was skilled with the bow, sharp-edged. On that fateful day, he roamed the woods in search of game. Through the trees, he caught sight of Krishna, seated in meditation upon a fallen log. The hunter's eyes narrowed. From afar, he mistook Krishna's radiant foot, shining in the sunlight, for the ear of a deer. Without hesitation, he strung his bow, loosed the arrow, and let it fly. The arrow strikes. The iron-tipped arrow, born of destiny, flew swift and unerring. It struck Krishna's foot, piercing his mortal body. The hunter rushed forward, his heart pounding, but when he beheld whom he had struck, his soul froze with terror. He fell at Krishna's feet, tears streaming from his eyes. "O Lord, forgive me. I did not know. I thought you were but a deer." But Krishna, serene, even in pain, placed his hand upon the hunter's head. His voice, gentle as the murmur of the sea, spoke forgiveness. "Rise, Jara. Do not fear. This is no crime of yours, is the fulfillment of fate. Long ago, in another age, I slew you when you were Vali, king of the monkeys. Today, you return the arrow, and the circle is complete." The hunter wept, but Krishna's smile was tranquil. "Leave me now, child. My time here is done." The return to the eternal. Alone once more, Krishna leaned back upon the forest floor. The sky above was a canvas of fading light, painted with the crimson of sunset. His thoughts drifted not to battles won or kingdoms restored, but to his time as Arjuna's charioteer, when he had revealed the song of the soul, the Bhagavad Gita. "What is born must die, what dies shall be born again," he murmured. "The soul is eternal, untouched by weapons, unburnt by fire, unbroken by time." With those words echoing in his heart, Krishna closed his eyes. A radiant light, unseen by mortal eyes, rose from his body, the eternal Vishnu, departing from the human shell. The forest grew still. The birds ceased to sing. The earth itself seemed to pause, honoring the passing of the divine. Arjuna's dream. Far away, in Hastinapura, Arjuna woke from a dream of fire and silence. In his vision, Krishna's voice had called to him, "Partha, my friend, the time has come. I depart, and with me ends the age you knew. Stand firm, for the world shall change." Tears streamed down Arjuna's face, for he knew his dearest friend, his guide, his eternal companion, had left the mortal realm. The beginning of Kali Yuga. With Krishna's passing, the world shifted. Dharma, once upheld by his presence, began to wane. The Kali Yuga, the age of darkness, greed, and strife, had dawned. Men would forget righteousness. Brothers would betray brothers. Kings would become tyrants. The memory of Kurukshetra and the wisdom of the Gita would fade into legend. Yet somewhere, in the eternal beyond, Krishna's smile endured an undying reminder that even in the darkest age, light could be found within the soul. Chapter 33. Arjuna and the Fall of Dvaraka. The sea whispered against the ruins of Dvaraka, its waves gnawing at the shattered walls and empty streets. The once golden city of Krishna, vibrant with music and festivals, now lay silent, its towers crumbling, its people scattered or slain in the drunken war of the Yadavas. Into this desolation rode Arjuna, his chariot wheels grinding upon the broken stone. His heart was heavy, for in his dreams Krishna had spoken farewell. And now, the silence of the city confirmed his deepest sorrow. The Lord of Dvaraka had departed the mortal world. The lonely arrival, Arjuna dismounted. His warrior's eyes scanned the city. What he saw pierced deeper than any arrow. Children weeping in empty courtyards, widows searching through the ashes, and the corpses of once mighty heroes lying unburied beneath the sun. The air was thick with grief. The people gathered at the sight of Arjuna, their faces desperate, clinging to hope. "Save us, O son of Pandu," they cried. "Our protectors are gone, our Lord Krishna has vanished, and we are prey to the waves and the raiders of the land. Take us away from this ruin." Arjuna raised his hand, though sorrow weighed upon him. "I shall not abandon you," he said. "Come, gather your families, your children, your treasures. We shall leave this fallen city and find refuge in Indra." Gathering the survivors, for days Arjuna guided the survivors of women carrying infants, elders leaning upon staffs, and orphans clinging to one another, all gathered under his protection. He looked upon them and remembered Krishna's laughter, his flute, his presence in every street of Dvaraka. Now all that remained was ruin. Without Krishna, Arjuna thought, this place is but stone and dust. Better that we depart and carry his memory than linger among ghosts. The journey begins. With carts laden, the survivors followed Arjuna as he led them inland, away from the sea. He rode at the front, Gandiva his celestial bow slung across his shoulder. But in his heart, unease grew, for though Gandiva had never failed him, though celestial weapons once leaped at his command, Arjuna felt a strange weakness. His arms seemed heavy, his arrows uncertain. Why does my strength falter? He wondered. Is it because Krishna is gone? The bandits strike. As the caravan wound through a desolate pass, shadows moved upon the cliffs. From hiding, a band of raiders, descended men hardened by greed, smelling the weakness of the refugees. They shouted and brandished crude weapons, their eyes burning with hunger for gold and blood. Arjuna, once invincible, rose to meet them. He strung Gandiva and let loose an arrow, but the shaft fell short, its power diminished. He drew again, invoking the divine weapons of Agni and Varuna, but the mantras faltered upon his lips, and the sky remained silent. The raiders surged forward, and Arjuna fought with sword and bow alike. His arms ached, his breath grew heavy. For the first time since his youth, fear brushed against his spirit. The bitter defeat, the bandits swarmed the caravan. Carts overturned, treasures seized, women and children dragged away in screams. Arjuna fought desperately, but his arrows no longer flew with divine fire. "Krishna, where are you?" he cried in his heart. In the end, he saved only a handful, while many were slain or carried into slavery. Exhausted, he sank to his knees, Gandiva slipping from his grasp. The survivors who remained looked upon him with sorrow, not blame, but the anguish of those who had once believed him a god among men, now reduced to mortal frailty. The realization, that night, beneath the stars, Arjuna sat alone. Gandiva lay across his knees, lifeless, no longer blazing with the power of the gods. His hands trembled as he remembered the battlefield of Kurukshetra, when his arrows had darkened the sky, when Krishna had guided his chariot, when victory was certain. Now, even common thieves had humbled him. "It is not the bow that has weakened," Arjuna whispered, "but me. The age of heroes has ended. With Krishna's passing, Dharma itself withdraws. The gods no longer walk with us." Tears burned in his eyes, for it was not defeat that pained him, but the knowledge that his time and the time of the Pandavas was over. The ashes of Dvaraka, the survivors who remained wept for their dead, but Arjuna gathered them with what strength he could. He swore to guide them safely, even if his power had waned. Before leaving the lands of the Yadavas forever, Arjuna turned one last time toward the distant sea. He saw in his mind's eye the shining towers of Dvaraka as they once were glorious, radiant with Krishna's presence. But when he blinked, only ruins remained. "Farewell, city of my friend," he said softly. As long as I live, I shall bear his memory. And with that, Arjuna led the survivors into the darkness of the age that was dawning, the Kali Yuga. Chapter 34. The Pandavas' decision to renounce the world. The sun dipped low over Hastinapura, gilding the palace towers in fading light. Arjuna's chariot creaked into the city gates, but no fanfare greeted him. His head was bowed, his spirit burdened with failure and grief. Yudhishthira, the eldest of the Pandavas, awaited him in the great hall. Beside him stood Bhima, Nakula, Sahadeva, and Draupadi. Their eyes, which once shone with the fire of warriors and kings, now carried only a quiet sorrow. Arjuna dismounted slowly, his steps heavy. Gandiva, his once glorious bow, was wrapped in cloth and laid across his shoulder like a burden too great to bear. The tale of Dvaraka. When he entered the hall, silence fell. At last, Yudhishthira asked, his voice low but steady, "Brother, what news do you bring of Krishna and Dvaraka?" Arjuna's throat tightened. He could not meet their eyes. "Dvaraka has fallen," he whispered. "The Yadavas are slain, consumed by their own fury. Krishna, our guide, our friend, our very soul, has departed this world. I came too late. The survivors followed me, but even they were stolen by bandits. My arms failed me. Gandiva is lifeless. I could not protect them." His voice cracked. The hall seemed to darken with his words. Bhima clenched his fists, but his strength, too, seemed dimmed. Nakula and Sahadeva bowed their heads, and Draupadi wept softly. Yudhishthira closed his eyes. So it is true. The age of heroes is over. With Krishna gone, Dharma itself withdraws from the earth. Yudhishthira's reflection. The king looked upon his brothers, upon Draupadi, and upon the silent court. He saw not warriors and rulers, but weary souls burdened by memories. "We have ruled long enough," Yudhishthira said. "The land is broken by war. Our glory is ashes. The Kuru line has withered, and even our sons are gone. What purpose remains in clinging to a throne when the world itself moves toward darkness?" Bhima's eyes flared. "Would you have us abandon all we have, one elder brother? We spilled oceans of blood for this throne. Shall it be left empty?" But even as he spoke, his voice lacked the thunder it once carried. Deep within, Bhima too felt the hollowness of victory without Krishna beside them. Draupadi's voice. Draupadi rose, her face pale but resolute. "Husbands, do you not see? The world has changed. The gods no longer walk among us. Our children are gone, our allies scattered. The war of Kurukshetra, the glory of Devarakothis, are but fading echoes. What remains is only suffering." Her words fell like truth upon their hearts. The brothers' decision. Arjuna spoke next, his voice trembling. "I held Gandiva in my hands, but it was as if I held a branch of dry wood. The celestial weapons answer me no longer. I am no longer Arjuna, slayer of kings. I am but a man, broken and weary. Without Krishna, I am nothing." At these words, Nakula and Sahadeva stepped forward, their twin voices calm yet sorrowful. If even Arjuna has lost his power, then surely it is a sign. The time of the Pandavas has ended. Bhima, stubborn as always, struggled with the thought, but at last he too bowed his head. "If you all go, I will not remain behind. Let the throne be another's burden. I shall walk beside you to the end." Yudhishthira, who had long carried the weight of kingship, breathed deeply. A lightness touched his face, though sorrow lingered in his eyes. "Then it is settled. We shall renounce the throne. the wealth, the power that once defined us. We shall take only the path of pilgrims, leaving Hastinapura behind. We shall walk north, toward the Himalayas, toward the end that awaits us. The passing of the crown. The people of Hastinapura were summoned. Before the gathered court, Yudhishthira removed the crown of the Kurush from his head. He placed it upon the brow of Parikshit, the grandson of Arjuna, the last heir of the Pandava line. Rule with justice, Yudhishthira told him. But know that the age of righteousness fades. The Kali Yuga begins. Guard the people as best you may. Parikshit bowed, tears streaming, for he knew he inherited not glory, but a world in decline. The final departure. When all was done, the Pandavas dressed not as kings, but as wanderers. They wore simple garments of bark and cloth, casting aside jewels and weapons. Arjuna placed Gandiva and his celestial quivers into a pyre of sacred fire, watching as the flames consumed the bow that had once shaken the earth. Together Yudhishthira, Bhima, Arjuna, Nakula, Sahadeva, and Draupadi left Hastinapura. No chariots bore them, no armies followed, only the sound of their feet upon the earth, steady and solemn. The people wept, for they knew they would never see such heroes again. But the Pandavas did not look back. Their eyes were set upon the north, where snow-crowned peaks pierced the heavens, toward the Himalayas. As they walked, silence grew between them. Yet, within that silence was peace, as though each step carried them closer to release. The world behind them crumbled, the age of Dharma fading, the Kali Yuga rising, but ahead lay only mountains, sky, and the unknown. Thus began the final journey of the Pandavas, not as conquerors, but as seekers of the end. Chapter 35. The Great Journey to the North. The sun rose gently over Hastinapura, but for the Pandavas, the golden light did not herald power or triumph. It marked the first day of their final journey. Clad in simple robes, the five brothers and Draupadi stepped away from the palace gates, leaving behind the city they had fought so hard to rule. No chariots followed them, no soldiers marched at their side, only the faint sound of sandals on dust and the quiet sobs of the people who lined the streets, watching their heroes depart. Some reached out with trembling hands, begging them to stay. Others wept silently, knowing no words could turn them back. But Yudhishthira did not look behind. His eyes were fixed upon the horizon, where the faint outline of snow-capped mountains gleamed against the morning sky. A king no longer. As they walked, Bhima muttered with unease, "Brother, are we truly to abandon everything? Our palace, our throne, the wealth we bled to earn gone in a single moment?" Yudhishthira's reply was calm, yet unshakable. "What is a throne to men who no longer belong to the world? We have seen kingdoms rise and fall, brothers and sons perish, gods themselves withdraw. All that is left is the path of truth. The Himalayas shall be our final resting place." Arjuna, walking behind, whispered bitterly, "If Krishna were still here, perhaps the world would not seem so empty. Without him, my arms are powerless, my heart hollow." Nakula placed a hand on his brother's shoulder. "Then let this journey heal us, Arjuna. Not with weapons or victories, but with release from grief." Sahadeva, the quietest among them, spoke for the first time. "The scriptures tell us, when Dharma departs, even heroes must lay down their arms. The Kali Yuga begins, and with it, our time ends." Draupadi listened, her steps steady, her face composed. She carried no jewels, no ornaments, only dignity, stripped of worldly burden. Signs of the Kali Yuga. As they traveled through villages and forests, the Pandavas began to see signs of the world's decline. Farmers quarreled bitterly over scraps of land. Neighbors betrayed one another for a handful of grain, and the once sacred rituals of the Brahmins were mocked or neglected. The air itself seemed heavier, the seasons less kind. "This is the Kali Yuga," Yudhishthira said softly. "An age when greed and lies will rule, when the noble and the wise will be forgotten. Our task is not to fight it, but to leave before it consumes us as well." The others listened in silence, for they too could see the truth in every step they took. Into the forests, the path northward led them into deep forests where birds sang and rivers ran clear. For a time, it seemed as though the world still held fragments of its ancient beauty. But Bhima, restless and proud, could not contain his frustration. "I do not understand, elder brother. Why should we walk like beggars through forests and fields when once we rode at the head of armies? The earth itself trembled when I roared in battle. Now, look at us silent wanderers, frail as old men." Yudhishthira turned to him. "Bhima, do you not see? Glory is fleeting. Strength fades, but truth endures. Our footsteps toward the mountains will mean more than all the blood we spilled at Kurusha. This is the true journey, the final test." Bhima frowned, but he said no more. Deep inside, even he knew that his great strength would not matter against the passage of time. The companion appears. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in crimson, a dog appeared from the shadows of the forest. Its fur was white as snow, its eyes calm and watchful. The animal padded quietly to Yudhishthira's side and walked with him as though it had always belonged there. Arjuna laughed softly. "A stray dog has chosen you as its master, elder brother." But Yudhishthira smiled faintly. "Perhaps it is not I who chose, but destiny. Let him walk with us. For every soul, no matter how humble, deserves a path to salvation." The dog wagged its tail and kept close, and from that day forward it never left Yudhishthira's side. Memories on the road. At night, when they camped beneath the stars, the brothers spoke of their past. Bhima remembered the feasts of their youth, when he devoured food like a lion. Arjuna spoke of battles, of the day he faced Karna, of the night Krishna guided his chariot through flames. Nakula and Sahadeva whispered of their childhood, their mother's gentle voice. Draupadi, silent for a long while, finally spoke of the day she was humiliated in the Kuru court, and how her husbands had sworn vengeance for her honor. The memories brought both tears and peace. They were no longer kings or warriors, they were simply men and a woman, carrying the weight of their lives into the endless night, toward the Himalayas. Weeks passed, villages grew fewer, forests denser, and the air grew colder as they pressed further north. The peaks of the Himalayas now loomed larger, shimmering in the distance like walls of heaven itself. One morning, Yudhishthira stopped to gaze upon them. "Brothers Draupadi, behold the mountains. There lies our destination. Not as conquerors, but as pilgrims, we shall climb until the body fails and the soul is freed." The others nodded, their faces solemn but resolved. And so, step by step, they continued their kingdom behind them, the world of mortals fading, the gates of eternity ahead. Chapter 36, Draupadi. Fall. The Himalayas loomed larger with every step. Their white peaks pierced the heavens, gleaming like celestial towers. The Pandavas, once rulers of Hastinapura, now walked as pilgrims upon the sacred earth, stripped of weapons, ornaments, and crowns. Beside them padded the white dog, silent and loyal, its eyes watchful, as though it carried some hidden truth. But the mountains, though beautiful, were merciless. The air grew thin, the path steep, and the cold bit into their bones. It was here, upon the slopes of eternity, that their first trial would come. The strain of the climb, the brothers pressed forward, their breaths shallow, their muscles burning. Draupadi, though strong in spirit, began to falter. Her feet dragged, and her once proud posture bent under the weight of exhaustion. Bhima noticed and frowned. "Wife of warriors, are you weary already? You must endure, for the climb has barely begun." Draupadi smiled faintly, though her lips were pale. "I have endured more than mountains, Bhima. Do you forget the court where I was shamed? Do you forget the exile we lived in forests, where I bore hunger and pain?" Yet, she paused, gasping for air. "My body no longer obeys me, as it once did." Arjuna tried to steady her. "Hold on, Draupadi. You are stronger than this. We shall walk slowly, together." But Yudhishthira, his eyes fixed upon the snowy peaks, spoke quietly. "No soul escapes the truth. The body is but a vessel, and when its time is done, it must fall." The first to fall, they continued for some miles, but the path grew steeper, the rocks sharper. Draupadi stumbled once, twice, then finally collapsed upon the stony ground. The brothers rushed to her side. Bhima lifted her in his great arms, but she was already fading. "Rise, Draupadi," Bhima roared. "You cannot fall here, not now." But Yudhishthira raised a hand. His voice was calm, though sorrow weighed upon every word. "Do not lift her, Bhima. Her journey is ended." The others turned to him, stunned. "How can you say this, elder brother?" Arjuna demanded, grief sharpening his tone. "She is our queen, our companion through every hardship. Why must she die here, upon the cold stone of a mountain path?" Yudhishthira closed his eyes. "Because such is the law of destiny. None of us will reach the summit with our bodies intact. One by one, we shall fall, each for the weight we still carry in our hearts." Draupadi's burden was her partiality. The truth revealed, the others stared in silence as Yudhishthira spoke. "She loved all five of us, but in her heart, Arjuna was dearest. This attachment bound her to the world, and for that, she cannot continue further." Draupadi, lying upon the cold stone, looked toward Yudhishthira. Her breath was shallow, but she whispered, "If it is so, then let it be known, I did love Arjuna most. But I loved you all as well, each in my own way. My heart was divided, my soul torn, but I gave what I could." A tear rolled down her cheek as her eyes grew still. Arjuna bowed his head, tormented by guilt. Nakula and Sahudeva wept softly, while Bhima clenched his fists, his rage helpless against death itself. The white dog sat silently beside the fallen queen, its eyes reflecting a strange calmness, as though it had long known this would come. The brothers move on. At last, Yudhishthira turned to the others. His voice was steady, though sorrow shadowed his face. "We cannot carry her body. The mountain is not a place for funerals, nor for clinging to what must pass. Let her spirit ascend. We must walk onward." Bhima growled, his heart burning with anger. "You speak as though you have no heart, elder brother. She was our wife, our queen, our companion. Will you leave her here like fallen stone?" Yudhishthira met his gaze with quiet resolve. "I do not leave her, Bhima. Her soul journeys where ours cannot yet follow. But we who still breathe must keep walking. To stop here would be to betray the very path we have chosen." One by one, the brothers lowered their heads in acceptance. They gazed for a last time upon Draupadi's body, lying peaceful among the rocks, her face turned toward the mountains, as though she longed to see heaven. Without another word, they rose and continued their climb. Draupadi, silent triumph, though her body lay upon the mountainside, Draupadi's spirit seemed to linger in the wind. The brothers felt her presence in the whisper of snow, in the flicker of starlight above. Arjuna walked with heavy steps, for he knew her love for him had been her downfall. Nakula and Sahadeva mourned quietly, remembering her laughter and her wisdom. Bhima, though angry, kept glancing back, as if unwilling to abandon her completely. But Yudhishthira alone walked forward without looking back. His heart ached, yet he knew this was the nature of their pilgrimage. Each fall was not defeat, but release. And so, Draupadi, queen of Hastinapura, flame of vengeance, and mother of heroes, became the first soul to leave the mortal path for the eternal. Chung 37. Draupadi's final journey. The Pandavas continued their solemn march through the harsh mountain paths of the Himalayas. The air was thin, each breath a struggle, yet their eyes were fixed on the path that led beyond the world of mortals. They had renounced their kingdom, their wealth, and even their family ties. Now, they walked the last road of life, the road to the heavens. Draupadi, ever graceful, even in hardship, walked behind her husbands. Her golden sari, dulled by dust and wind, fluttered in the bitter air. Her steps faltered, her once unshakable spirit weighed down by exhaustion. Still, she pressed on, her gaze fixed on the figures of her husbands climbing ahead. Suddenly, Draupadi stumbled. A sharp cry escaped her lips as she fell to the ground. The stones beneath her tore at her hands, but her body no longer held the strength to rise. Her long journey, marked by sacrifice, love, and sorrow, had come to its end. Bhima, hearing the sound, turned his head in alarm. His heart pounded as he saw his beloved queen on the ground. He rushed to Yudhishthira, his voice trembling with grief. "Elder brother, Draupadi has fallen. Why do we not go to her? Why do we not lift her, help her, as she has always stood by us?" But Yudhishthira did not turn his head. His voice was calm, though heavy with unspoken pain. "Bhima, we cannot stop. The law of destiny has claimed her. Each of us must meet our fate alone. Draupadi falls, because in her heart, though she was devoted, she favored Arjuna above all her husbands. That secret desire weighs upon her spirit." Bhima's eyes burned with anguish. He wanted to defy fate, to lift Draupadi into his arms, to carry her to the very gates of heaven if needed. Yet the truth of Yudhishthira's words held him still. Tears welled in his eyes as he looked upon Draupadi, wife, partner in their struggles, who had endured humiliation, exile, and war at their side. Draupadi, lying on the cold stones, looked up at the sky. Her lips moved faintly, whispering a prayer no one could hear. Then, with a final breath, her eyes closed. The mountain winds lifted her sari as if in mourning, and the great queen of the Pandavas became one with the eternal path. The brothers walked on, their hearts heavy, yet their feet unyielding. Behind them lay the fallen body of Draupadi, but ahead lay the final truth of their lives. Each step was no longer just a movement through stone and dust, but through the weight of their past deeds, toward the judgment of the gods. Thus, the first to fall upon the final journey was Draupadi, the fiery queen who had shared their victories and their sorrows. Her story ended upon the lonely mountain path, but her spirit, like her name, would echo through eternity. Chapter 38. Sahadeva's Fall. The Himalayas rose before them like the very spires of the heavens, silent, cold, and immovable. Jagged peaks, carved against the sky, shimmered with eternal snow, glowing in hues of silver and pale gold as the sun dipped lower. The Pandavas, weary from years of triumph and loss, marched in solemn procession across the treacherous paths. Yudhishthira led, his staff steady though his heart grew heavy. Beside him walked Bhima, his massive form stooped but unbroken, while Arjuna, silent and withdrawn, gazed into horizons only he seemed to see. Draupadi, frail yet radiant, had already fallen, her body claimed by the mountains in the chapter of their journey past. Now, only 4 brothers remained. Sahadeva, the youngest of the twins, trod quietly at the rear. He had always been known for his wisdom, the one who spoke little but saw deeply. His mind, sharp as the edge of a jewel, was both his strength and his burden. He had foretold much of this journey, though silence bound his tongue. His prophecies, unspoken, weighed on his soul like an anchor. The wind howled that evening, cutting like knives across their skin. Loose stones rattled beneath their sandals, and every step demanded strength of will. Bhima muttered under his breath about the futility of such a climb, about why the gods required men to prove themselves even after winning kingdoms and wars. Yudhishthira answered little. He bore within him the weight of Dharmatha, path of truth, and that truth demanded the Pandavas surrender all earthly bonds, one by one. As night fell, they made camp by a crag, overlooking an endless drop into shadow. The stars emerged, piercing and cold, and the silence of the mountains pressed heavily around them. It was then that Sahadeva, usually the quietest, began to speak. "Elder brother," he said softly to Yudhishthira, "when we were young, I sought knowledge beyond what the world was meant to hold. I prided myself on wisdom, and though I often kept silent, in my heart I believed I knew more than any man should. It was arrogance disguised as humility." Yudhishthira looked at him, the firelight flickering across his face. "No man is free of weakness, so what matters is not pride or error, but whether one learns and seeks truth." But Sahadeva only lowered his eyes. He felt the weight of his hidden pride, that he believed himself the wisest, and often judged his brothers quietly. He wondered whether this mountain would strip him of that pretense. At dawn, they rose again, and began their climb. The air thinned, every breath a struggle. Even Bhima, strong as 10 elephants, gasped and slowed. Arjuna leaned heavily on his bow, his steps unsteady. Sahadeva's thoughts turned inward as his vision blurred with exhaustion. Images of their mother Kunti came to him, her gentle hands, her whispered prayers. He thought of Draupadi, whose fall had shaken them all, and of Nakula, his twin, whose bond was closer than life itself. The path narrowed, forcing them to walk in single file along a cliffside. One misstep would mean death. The mountain seemed to demand sacrifice, as if no soul could pass without first being tested. Sahadeva stumbled, catching himself against the rocks. His brothers did not seethe, the wind howled too loudly, their eyes fixed ahead. He smiled faintly, even in pain. Perhaps this was the moment foretold. Perhaps he had known all along. A great falcon wheeled in the sky above, circling, crying out. Sahadeva's legs buckled. He fell to his knees, gasping, his body giving way to the mountain's cruel embrace. Nakula turned at once, his eyes wide with terror. "Brother," he cried, rushing to his side. But Sahadeva shook his head weakly. "No, Nakula, this is as it must be. Do not grieve. I was proud of my wisdom, proud that I believed myself above others. That pride has no place on the path to heaven." Yudhishthira, his face grave, did not stop walking. His voice, carried by the wind, came back to them. He falls because of his silent pride, for even wisdom can corrupt when it breeds arrogance. Do not tarry. The path allows no turning back. Nakula knelt beside his twin, tears streaming down his face. He clasped Sahadeva's hand tightly, but felt the strength leaving it. "Do not leave me," he whispered. Sahadeva smiled faintly, his breath shallow. "We are twins. What is yours has always been mine. Even in death, we are bound. But now you must walk further. I will wait where the soul waits, until you join me." His eyes closed, his chest stilled. Sahadeva's body slumped against the stones, lifeless. The wisdom of his mind returned to the silence of the earth. Nakula's cry echoed across the cliffs, swallowed quickly by the roaring wind. He bent low, placing his forehead against Sahadeva's cold hand, before rising slowly, his face shadowed with grief. The remaining Pandavas stood in silence. Bhima clenched his fists until they bled. Arjuna bowed his head, lips moving in unheard prayer. Yudhishthira gazed ahead, his expression heavy yet unyielding. Another bond severed, another soul surrendered to the mountain. He knew more would follow. The four survivors walked on, leaving Sahadeva's body upon the path of snow and stone. Behind them, the falcon cried once more and vanished into the clouds. Ahead, the peaks waited silent, eternal, merciless. The march to heaven continued. Chapter 39. Fall. The Pandavas pressed on, their footsteps echoing against the vast silence of the Himalayas. The trail grew narrower, climbing ever higher into a world of snow and stone. Behind them lay Sahadeva, the youngest, his wisdom surrendered to the cold mountain. Each step forward was a reminder of loss, each breath a struggle against the thin, biting air. Nakula walked with his heart torn in two. His twin, his mirror soul, had fallen. Since their birth, Sahadeva had been more than a brother. He was a part of himself. They had shared thoughts without words, laughed at secrets no one else understood. And now, for the first time, Nakula felt incomplete, as though half his soul had been stolen away by the mountain. The grief weighed heavier than his body could bear. His steps faltered often, and though Bhima tried to steady him with a strong hand, Nakula gently pulled away. "Do not help me, Bhima," he whispered. "If Sahadeva is gone, then I must prove strong enough to walk on my own." But deep inside, he knew he was not strong enough. Not without his twin. The brothers climbed higher, past cliffs that scraped the heavens, through winds that roared like the cries of ancient spirits. The snow lashed their faces, blinding and merciless. Still, Yudhishthira pressed forward, steady and relentless, his eyes fixed on a truth beyond the mortal world. At last they paused upon a ledge, where the world stretched vast and endless below them. The peaks glimmered like white flames, and the sun, distant and pale, cast their shadows long upon the snow. It was here that Nakula stopped. His chest heaved, his breath shallow. He placed his hand against the cold rock and spoke. "Elder brother," he called to Yudhishthira, his voice trembling, "why did you not grieve for Sahadeva? He was the wisest among us, and yet you walked on as though his fall was nothing." Yudhishthira did not turn. His voice was firm, though heavy with sorrow. "Grief is within me, Nakula, but the path of Dharma allows no turning back. Each of us must face our truth. Sahadeva fell because of his pride in wisdom, hidden though it was. And you, too, carry a burden within your soul." Nakula's face darkened. "And what is my sin, brother?" Have I not always been loyal, gentle, and true?" Yudhishthira's gaze fixed on the horizon. "Yes, you have. But in your heart, you cherished vanity. You believed yourself the most beautiful, proud that the world admired your form. Though your deeds were noble, your heart clung to that pride. The mountain strips us of all illusions. It judges not by words, but by the secret truths we carry." Nakula staggered back, struck by the weight of those words. His vanity silent but real rose before him like a mirror. He remembered the many times he had looked upon his reflection in still waters, proud of the beauty that mirrored the gods themselves. He had not spoken of it, but in his heart he had believed his face a gift above all others. His legs trembled. The cliff seemed to sway beneath him. He looked to Arjuna, who met his gaze with quiet sorrow, and to Bhima, who clenched his fists in helpless rage. Finally, Nakula turned to the empty sky, his voice breaking. "If this is my truth, then I accept it. But let me not be remembered for pride. Let me be remembered as the twin who loved his brother more than life." With those words, Nakula's strength failed. He stumbled, his body crumpling into the snow. His eyes dimmed, but his lips curved into a faint smile, as though in death he had found his twin again. His chest rose once, then fell still. "Nakula!" Bhima roared, rushing forward. He knelt beside the fallen prince, his great hands shaking as he lifted him. "First Draupadi, then Sahudeva, and now you. How many more must the gods take before they are satisfied?" His cry echoed through the mountains, fierce and broken. Arjuna bowed his head, whispering a prayer. "The mountain takes only what is already within us. We cannot fight it, Bhima. We can only walk on." Yudhishthira stood silent, his face carved in grief and resolve. Nakula falls because of vanity. His beauty was a gift, but he held it as pride in his heart. The mountain accepts no illusions. Only truth can pass. Bhima turned on him with fury. "Brother, how can you be so cold? Will you watch us all die and speak only of sin? Have we not given enough kingdom, family, and life itself? Must we be judged even here?" Yudhishthira's voice shook, though he stood firm. "I do not speak with coldness. I speak because it is dark. Without truth, none of us may enter heaven. Even I will be judged before this mountain." Silence fell. The wind howled, tearing at their clothes, carrying away their words. At last, Bhima laid Nakula's body upon the snow beside his twin's distant memory. His shoulders sagged, his anger drained into sorrow. 3 brothers remained, Yudhishthira, Arjuna, and Bhima. They turned once more to the path ahead, leaving Nakula behind, his beauty surrendered to the cold mountain. Above, the falcon wheeled again in the sky, its cry sharp and haunting. It circled once, then vanished into the clouds as though bearing Nakula's soul to join Sahadeva's in the realm beyond. The Pandavas walked on, their numbers dwindled, their hearts heavy, and the mountain loomed higher, demanding more before the journey's end. Chapter 40. Arjuna's Fall. The mountain stretched endlessly above them, a cruel wall of stone and snow that seemed to touch the heavens. 3 remained, Yudhishthira, Bhima, and Arjuna. Behind them, the trail of death lay Draupadi, Sahadeva, and Nakula, their bodies surrendered to the silence of the Himalayas. The air grew thinner, every breath a struggle, yet still Yudhishthira pressed on, steady as the rhythm of fate. Arjuna walked behind him, his bowless hands clenched at his sides. The warrior who had once held Gandiva, the celestial bow gifted by the gods, now walked unarmed. He had fought countless battles, defeated kings, and heard the song of Krishna himself upon the field of Kurukshetra. Yet now, each step felt heavier than the last. Memories surged within him. He saw again the burning of Khandava forest, where he and Krishna fought as equals to the gods. He recalled the Swayambara of Draupadi, where his skill with the bow had won her hand. He remembered the day at Kurukshetra when he had trembled, his will broken, and Krishna had revealed the wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita to him, opening his eyes to Dharma. He remembered his countless victories, his arrows striking like lightning, his enemies falling like shadows before the sun. But now his bow was gone, and Krishna was gone. Arjuna was only a man, walking toward the end. Bhima noticed his brother's silence and slowed his pace to walk beside him. "Arjuna," he said, his voice softer than usual, "you are troubled. Speak, for the burden within you weighs heavier than this mountain." Arjuna gave a bitter smile. "I have fought all my life, Bhima. My skill with the bow was unmatched. Kings trembled before me. Even gods acknowledged my might. And yet," his voice faltered, the words lost in the icy wind. "And yet what?" Bhima pressed. Arjuna's shoulders sagged. "I was proud. Proud of Gandiva, proud of my arrows, proud that the world called me the greatest warrior. Without my bow, what am I now? Without Krishna, who guided my hand, what am I? I fear, Bhima, that I am nothing." Bhima opened his mouth to protest, but Yudhishthira's voice carried back to them, steady and unyielding. "Arjuna, it is not the loss of Gandiva or Krishna that weighs you down. It is your pride. You believed yourself the greatest, and though your victories were countless, that pride still binds you. The mountain allows no illusions. It demands truth." Arjuna's chest tightened at his brother's words. The truth struck him harder than any arrow. All his life, he had measured himself by his strength, his skill, his victories. He had thought himself chosen, destined for greatness. And now, stripped of his weapons, stripped of Krishna, he saw himself clearly. A man who had built his worth upon pride. He stumbled. His knees struck the snow. Bhima caught his arm, but Arjuna shook his head, his breath ragged. "No, Bhima. This is the end of my path. Do not speak so." Bhima roared, gripping his brother's shoulders. "You are Arjuna, Partha, the peerless warrior of Kurukshetra. You cannot fall like this." But Arjuna's eyes, once sharp as an eagle's, now softened with acceptance. He looked at Bhima and Yudhishthira, his voice quiet but resolute. "I fought for glory. I fought for victory. Even when I told myself it was for Dharma, I craved the honor of being unmatched. That pride has lived in me, hidden beneath noble words. Now, the mountain strips it bare." Tears stung Bhima's eyes as he shook his head fiercely. "If you fall, brother, what hope remains for me?" Arjuna gave a faint smile. "Do not grieve, Bhima. You have always been strength itself. You fight with heart, not for glory, but for love, for Draupadi, for us, for righteousness. Walk on, Bhima. Walk with Yudhishthira. My journey ends here." He turned his face upward, toward the peaks, blazing white against the sky. "Krishna," he whispered, his voice breaking, "I am ready." Then, as though the mountain itself had waited for those words, his body faltered. He swayed once, then collapsed onto the snow. His chest rose shallowly, then stilled. Arjuna, son of Pandu, wielder of Gandiva, the greatest archer of his age, lay lifeless upon the path. "No," Bhima bellowed, his cry shaking the frozen air. He knelt beside his brother, shaking him, refusing to let go. His tears froze upon his cheeks, yet still they fell. "You cannot leave me, Arjuna. We were to finish this journey together." We were to reach heavens side by side. But Arjuna did not stir. His face, even in death, held a strange peace, as though the pride that once bound him had finally lifted. Yudhishthira stood a short distance away, his hands folded, his voice heavy. Arjuna falls because of pride in his skill, in his victories. He was the greatest of warriors, but even he could not carry vanity beyond this mountain. Bhima rose to his feet, his grief twisting into rage. He turned to Yudhishthira, his voice thunderous. "Brother, you speak of pride and vanity, of sins and dharma, but have you no heart? They were our family. Must you watch each of us die and speak only of judgment?" Yudhishthira's eyes glistened, but he did not falter. "My heart bleeds with every loss. Do not mistake my silence for coldness. But I must walk with truth. If I falter, if I lie even to myself, then I too will fall before my time." The silence that followed was heavier than stone. Bhima clenched his fists until his knuckles bled, but he said no more. Instead, he lifted Arjuna's body gently, laying him upon the snow. He pressed his forehead to his brother's cold hand, then rose again, his massive frame trembling with sorrow. Only two remained now, Yudhishthira, steady as Dharma itself, and Bhima, raging like the storm yet broken within. The falcon circled above once more, its cry piercing the sky, carrying Arjuna's soul to join those who had already fallen. The brothers turned back to the path. The mountain loomed higher, merciless and eternal, demanding yet more before the journey's end. Chapter 41, Bhima's Fall. The mountain path narrowed into a cruel ribbon of ice and stone. The wind howled louder, as if mocking the two brothers who remained, Yudhishthira and Bhima. Behind them, four shadows lay scattered along the frozen trail: Draupadi, Sahadeva, Nakula, and Arjuna. Each had fallen, claimed by their hidden flaws, their humanity stripped bare before the mountain's divine judgment. Bhima walked heavily, his great chest heaving with grief and fury. His mighty arms, which had torn apart demons and crushed warriors by the hundreds, now trembled with weakness. He could not fight. For the first time in his life, Bhima felt powerless. "Yudhishthira," he growled, his voice thick, "why must we go on? What meaning has this path if it takes all we love? I cared not for heaven or glory, I wanted only my family, and now they lie frozen in the snow while you march like stone toward the sky." Yudhishthira did not stop. His steps were steady, his gaze fixed upon the endless climb. "We walk this path, not for glory, Bhima, but because it is done. We walk toward truth, and truth is never without loss." Bhima snarled. "Dharma, Dharma, always Dharma. I have lived my life by strength, by the beat of my heart, not by these riddles of duty. And yet, I fought when you told me. I obeyed when you commanded. I shed blood for righteousness. Was that not enough? Must even my heart be torn from me?" Silence stretched between them, broken only by the shriek of the wind. Yudhishthira's voice, when it came, was heavy with sorrow. "Each fall teaches us what binds us still. Draupadi fell for love, Sahadeva for pride in knowledge, Nakula for vanity, Arjuna for his unmatched skill. And you, Bhima, do not speak it." Bhima roared, his eyes blazing. But Yudhishthira's words pressed on, unyielding as fate. "You are bound by appetite, not only for food, which you have loved more than any, but for strength, for power, for victory. You have always hungered, Bhima. The mountain knows this hunger. It will not let you pass." Bhima staggered, his heart pounding like war drums. He remembered the countless feasts where he ate until the hall shook with laughter. He remembered battles where he had relished the clash of steel, the taste of triumph. Hunger had been his fire, his driving force. He had never thought it a flaw. "No," he whispered, his breath frosting in the air. "I fought for love, for Draupadi, for my brothers. I fought to protect what was ours." Yudhishthira turned at last, his face stern but his eyes wet with grief. "I know your heart, I know your love. But even love was never enough to fill you. Always you craved more food, more battle, more victory. That is your truth." Bhima's breath caught. For a moment, he wanted to deny it, to rage against his brother's words. But deep within, he felt the mountain pressing against his chest, demanding honesty. Hunger had always been his companion, his strength, his curse. He sank to his knees, his great hands clawing at the snow. "Then let me fall here, Yudhishthira. Let the mountain take me. But know this," his voice thundered through the icy air. "I loved with all my heart. I fought with all my soul. Whatever my flaw, I was loyal to the end." Yudhishthira's face softened, and for a fleeting moment, the mask of Dharma gave way to brotherly sorrow. He stepped forward and placed a trembling hand upon Bhima's head. "None can deny your loyalty, Bhima. You were the strength of the Pandavas, the protector of us all. Without you, we could not have won a single battle. Your love was fierce, your devotion unshaken. If hunger brought your fall, let it be known that your heart was vast enough to hold us all." Bhima's chest heaved, his vision blurred, yet a strange peace settled upon him, heavier even than grief. He looked up at Yudhishthira one last time, his voice breaking. "Brother, do not walk alone. When you reach the end, tell Krishna I loved him too. Tell Draupadi I kept my promise, though I could not carry her further." Then, with a shuddering breath, Bhima collapsed into the snow. His great frame stilled, the strength of 10,000 elephants dissolving into silence. The ground seemed to tremble, as though honoring the fall of its fiercest son. Yudhishthira stood frozen, his hand lingering upon the place where Bhima had fallen. His heart, though trained in detachment, cracked beneath the weight of grief. The mountain had taken them all. He was alone now. Above, the falcon circled once more, its cry echoing across the peaks. It had watched Draupadi fall, then the twins, then Arjuna, and now Bhima. Each time, it carried their souls upward, guiding them beyond mortal grasp. Now, it circled for the last of Pandu's strength, the lion of Kurukshetra, who had roared his defiance until the end. Snow swirled around Yudhishthira as he turned back to the path. His brothers were gone, but Dharma still walked within him. The mountain loomed, vast and merciless, demanding the last sacrifice. The lone king, weary yet unbroken, pressed onward, each step heavier than all the battles he had ever fought. Behind him lay the silence of 5 fallen souls. Ahead, the promise of truth or the abyss. Chapter 42, Yudhishthira, Alone. The mountain stood like an eternal sentinel, its peaks buried in clouds, its silence deeper than any temple. Snow fell in restless waves, covering the trail of bodies that Yudhishthira had left behind. First Draupadi, then Sahadeva, then Nakula, then Arjuna, and now Bhima. Each one gone, each one taken by their own hidden flaw. Now, only Yudhishthira remained. The eldest of the Pandavas pressed forward with slow, deliberate steps. Every breath burned like fire in his chest. Every gust of wind tore at his frail body, but he did not falter. The world behind him was silence. The world ahead was judgment. A voice whispered through the snow, faint yet unmistakable. "Why do you continue? All have fallen. You are alone. Turn back. Yudhishthira did not pause, his eyes fixed upon the summit, though the path was veiled in mist. I walk because I must, he said softly, his voice nearly stolen by the wind. I walk because truth demands it. The falcon that had followed them since the beginning circled above, its wings gleaming silver against the storm. It had carried away the souls of his brothers, one by one. Now it watched him, silent, as if waiting. Yudhishthira's mind drifted to memories. He saw Draupadi's laughter, radiant as the spring. He heard Sahatava's wisdom, sharp and clear. He saw Nakula's proud smile, Arjuna's bow arched like the rainbow, Bhima's thunderous laughter. They walked beside him still, not as flesh but as echoes within his heart. His steps slowed. His body trembled. For a moment, he thought of lying down in the snow, of surrendering to the mountain's cold embrace. Perhaps, he whispered, it would be better to join them now. What is heaven without them? What is truth without love? But as soon as the thought formed, he remembered Krishna's voice, the gentle, playful, unyielding wisdom that had guided him through Kurukshetra. Dharma is not easy, Yudhishthira. It asks not what pleases you, but what must be. Walk on, even when alone. Strength flickered in his weary heart. He gripped the staff in his hand and took another step. The path grew steeper. Rocks cut his sandals, and his blood stained the snow. Yet Yudhishthira pressed upward, his mind clinging to Dharma as a drowning man clings to driftwood. Suddenly, the falcon descended and landed upon the path before him. Its eyes glowed with a strange, otherworldly light. When it spoke, its voice was clear, deep, and full of eternity. Yudhishthira, son of Dharma, the bird said, you are the last. All others have fallen. Why should you alone be spared? Speak your truth. Yudhishthira bowed his head. Not because I am flawless, not because I am greater than they. I, too, am a man, bound by weakness. But I have clung to truth, even when it cost me everything. I walk not for glory, not for heaven, but because it is the path I must walk. If I fall with truth upon my lips. That is all. The falcon's wings stretched wide, and its form shimmered. Before Yudhishthira's eyes, the bird transformed into a radiant being, glowing with divine fire. It was Dharma himself, his true father. Yudhishthira, Dharma said, his voice like thunder wrapped in tenderness. You have been tested, and you have not swerved. Where others fell, you endured. Where desire bound them, you held to truth. You shall not fall, for you are the son of Dharma indeed. Yudhishthira's knees weakened, not from exhaustion, but from awe. Tears streamed down his face, freezing against his skin. Then why, he whispered, why must my brothers fall, while I remain? What justice lies in this loneliness? Dharma's gaze softened. Their flaws were their burdens, but their virtues were great. Do not think them condemned. They walk paths of their own, and their souls are guarded. Their fall was not their end, only their passage. Yours is the path of truth, and truth is often walked alone. The mountain trembled. Clouds broke apart, and for the first time, Yudhishthira saw the summit bathed in golden light. The snow no longer bit at his flesh. The wind no longer cut like knives. A strange peace filled the air. Step by step, he climbed. His body was broken, but his spirit burned brighter than the sun. He carried no weapons, no brothers, no wife. He carried only truth, and truth was enough. At last, Yudhishthira stood at the peak. The world stretched out beneath him, forests, rivers, oceans, kingdoms, all of mortal life lay like a dream, fading into mist. Above him shone a path of light, leading beyond the sky. Dharma spoke again. You have reached the gates of heaven, Yudhishthira. Enter now, not as king, not as warrior, but as one who held truth when all else fell away. Yudhishthira closed his eyes. For a moment, he thought he heard the laughter of his brothers, the voice of Draupadi, the song of Krishna. His heart ached, yet within that ache was peace. He stepped forward into the light, and the mountain, silent and eternal, watched as the last of the Pandavas vanished into eternity. Chapter 43. The Gates of Heaven. The golden path stretched before Yudhishthira, shining brighter than any dawn. Clouds parted like curtains, and the heavens unveiled themselves, a realm of light beyond mortal comprehension. He had reached the threshold where no man of flesh could walk, where kings and beggars alike laid down their burdens. At the summit stood a gateway wrought not of stone or metal, but of living radiance. Its pillars rose higher than mountains, carved from beams of eternal light. The air was music, a harmony of unseen voices that seemed to sing the truth of the universe itself. Yudhishthira paused. His heart trembled with awe, but also with a strange unease. Behind him lay the trail of sorrow, his fallen brothers, Draupadi's silent body upon the snow. Ahead lay promise, yet promise without them. Could heaven truly be heaven without those he loved? As he stood there, a figure emerged from the gates, clad in shimmering armor, crowned with divine fire. The figure's smile was radiant, yet sharp. It was Indra, Lord of the heavens. Yudhishthira, son of Dharma, Indra called, his voice like thunder softened by the breeze. You have endured where none could. You have walked alone, carrying truth as your only shield. Heaven opens for you. Cast aside your sorrow and enter. But Yudhishthira did not move. His weary eyes met Indra's, and his voice was steady, though faint. I do not seek heaven for myself. Tell me, where are my brothers? Where is Draupadi? If heaven is only for me, then it is no heaven at all. Indra's smile faltered. They walked different paths. The weight of their flaws pulled them elsewhere. You alone have remained pure in truth. Accept your reward, Yudhishthira. This place is for you. The eldest Pandava's heart burned with grief. He clenched his staff, his frail body trembling. I will not enter without them. If heaven denies Draupadi, who suffered endlessly yet never abandoned us, then I deny heaven. If heaven cannot hold Bhima's loyalty, Arjuna's valor, Nakula's pride, Sahadava's wisdom, then I shall share their fate, whatever it may be. The heavens stirred. Thunder rolled in the golden sky. Indra's voice deepened, sharp as a blade. Would you reject paradise itself? Would you throw away eternity for the fallen? Yudhishthira's eyes did not waver. What is eternity worth, if bought with betrayal of love? What is paradise, if it demands I abandon those who walked beside me? If my brothers suffer, let me suffer with them. If Draupadi weeps, let me share her tears. I choose not heaven, but truth, and truth binds me to them. The silence that followed was vast, stretching across heaven and earth. The radiant gates pulsed as though alive, and the golden path flickered like a candle in storm. Then, another figure appeared, cloaked in shadows deeper than night. His eyes glowed with red fire, his presence heavy as chains. Yudhishthira knew at once. It was Yama, Lord of Death, the keeper of the underworld. Then come, Yama said, his voice low and chilling. If you reject heaven, you shall walk with me. Your brothers are not here. They lie in my halls, where their deeds have led them. Do you dare follow? The air grew cold, and the golden sky dimmed. Yet Yudhishthira did not flinch. "Yes," he said simply. "If that is where they are, then that is where I belong." The world around him twisted. Light gave way to darkness, warmth to icy winds. The radiant gates vanished, replaced by a cavern of shadows, filled with cries that echoed without end. Flames flickered on the horizon, and the stench of suffering filled the air. Yudhishthira staggered but did not turn away. He heard voices, anguished, broken, yet familiar. Bhima's roar, once filled with laughter, now twisted in pain. Arjuna's cry, Nakula's wail, Sahadeva's silence turned into torment. And Draupadi, her voice, soft and despairing, called his name. Tears blurred his vision. His knees buckled, but he forced himself forward. "I am here," he cried, into the abyss. "I will not leave you. If this is your fate, it is mine as well. I choose not bliss, but loyalty. Not heaven, but love." The cries rose, surrounding him, drowning him. Yet, as he stood in defiance, something strange happened. The shadows began to tremble. The air shifted. The voices grew fainter, softer, until they melted into silence. Suddenly, the darkness peeled away like a veil. The flames died, the cries vanished, and the stench turned to fragrance. Before Yudhishthira's eyes, the cavern of torment transformed into a vast hall of light, brighter and purer than before. The figures of his brothers appeared, standing whole and radiant. Draupadi, too, shone with a beauty unscarred by sorrow. They looked upon Yudhishthira, their eyes filled with gratitude and awe. Indra's voice thundered once more, but now it carried reverence. This was the final test. Heaven is not given lightly. One must prove not only righteousness, but loyalty, compassion, and truth. You have endured all. You chose them above yourself, and by that choice, you have transcended all trials. The hall blazed with light. Gods and sages appeared, singing praises that shook the heavens. Dharma himself stood beside Yudhishthira, pride shining in his eternal gaze. "Enter now, Yudhishthira," Dharma said. "Not alone, but with those you love. For heaven is not paradise without them, and you have shown the world what true Dharma means." The gates of heaven opened wide, not for one man, but for all the Pandavas and Draupadi. Together, they stepped forward, no longer burdened by sorrow, no longer bound by flaws. They entered not as kings, not as warriors, but as souls bound eternally by truth. And thus, the journey that began in war ended in peace, not in the glory of one, but in the union of all. Chapter 44. Eternal Peace. The light of heaven embraced Yudhishthira and his companions as they crossed the radiant threshold. The burdens of mortality fell away like discarded robes, and the scars of war, sorrow, and loss dissolved into nothingness. The Pandavas and Draupadi stood transformed, their forms radiant and eternal, as though made of the very light of the cosmos. A vast hall unfolded before them, more splendid than any palace they had ever known. Its walls shimmered with jewels, brighter than stars. Its floors shone with the reflection of infinity itself. Around them rose the sound of celestial music, a symphony that resonated not in ears, but in the very soul. The gods themselves gathered to greet them. Indra, Lord of Heaven, stepped forward and bowed not with condescension, but with genuine respect. "Welcome, Yudhishthira, Bhima, Arjuna, Nakula, Sahadeva, and Draupadi. You have passed every trial, borne every pain, and revealed the highest truth of Dharma. The heavens are yours." The Pandavas exchanged glances, each filled with quiet wonder. Bhima, who had roared in battle and hungered for glory, looked around in awe. So this is the reward of our endless struggle. Yet his voice carried no arrogance, only peace. Arjuna placed a hand upon his brother's shoulder. Not reward, be reunion. For here we are together again, free of shadows. Nakula and Sahadeva, ever united in thought and heart, gazed at the brilliance before them, their pride and wisdom now elevated to serenity. And Draupadi, who had suffered humiliation, exile, and endless grief, stood taller than any queen of the earth. Her face glowed, free of sorrow, and her eyes sparkled with fulfillment long denied in life. But Yudhishthira, eldest and wisest, did not immediately step forward. His gaze swept across the celestial hosts and finally rested upon his father, Dharma, who stood radiant, cloaked in eternal justice. "Father," Yudhishthira said softly, "is this truly the end? Have we arrived at the final rest?" Dharma's smile was both tender and solemn. "This is not an end, Yudhishthira, but a beginning beyond endings. In the world of men, all things perish, kingdoms rise and fall, warriors triumph and fade, even love is tested by time. But here, the soul knows no decay. You have proven that righteousness is not in conquest, but in loyalty, compassion, and truth. That lesson will echo through ages." As Dharma spoke, the heavens shimmered, and visions unfolded across the radiant sky. Yudhishthira and his family saw their mortal lives played like shadows of memory, the dice game, Draupadi's humiliation, the 13 years of exile, the battlefield of Kurukshetra, soaked in blood. They saw friends and foes alike, Krishna's smile, Karna's lonely valor, Duryodhana's pride, Shakuni's schemes, and then they saw humanity below, still telling their story. The Mahabharata was alive, whispered from one generation to another, shaping kings and commoners alike, guiding them in questions of duty and desire, love and sacrifice. Bhima clenched his fist, but this time not in anger. All that blood, all that suffering, will it be worth it? Dharma turned to him. It already has been. For mortals learn not from peace, but from trial. Your deeds, your struggles are the mirrors through which humanity learns to choose. Draupadi stepped forward, her voice steady. Then let them also remember not only the war, but the woman who endured it. Let them remember that dignity is not lost even when stripped of everything. Let them know that suffering does not erase strength. A hush fell over the heavens. Even the gods bowed to her words. Then a brilliant light filled the hall, greater than all others. From its core emerged Krishna, eternal and smiling, no longer the charioteer, no longer the strategist, but the supreme being himself. His presence was love, truth, and eternity woven into one. "Beloved friends," Krishna said, his voice like the song of creation itself, "you have returned home. The play of life is over, the curtain has fallen, but the story remains. You are not merely kings or warriors. You are symbols, lessons, eternal flames. Humanity will never forget you." The Pandavas and Draupadi fell to their knees, tears of joy upon their radiant faces. Even in heaven, they felt humbled by Krishna's grace. Krishna raised his hand, and at once the hall dissolved into a boundless expanse of stars. Here, there is no throne, no war, no grief. Here, all are one with the eternal. One by one, the Pandavas felt the weight of eternity wash over them. Bhima laughed, not in hunger or battle fury, but in freedom. Arjuna closed his eyes, finally, at peace with his bow laid down. Nakula and Sahadeva clasped hands, united forever. Draupadi, radiant as the dawn, felt her heart whole at last. And you, he breathed deeply, his soul unshaken, his truth unbroken. At last, he whispered, I understand. Heaven is not the reward of righteousness, is the harmony of love, truth, and loyalty. Krishna smiled. And so, the Mahabharata finds its eternal ending, not in victory, nor in loss, but in truth revealed. The Pandavas and Draupadi stepped forward into the infinite light, hand in hand, their forms dissolving into the eternal essence of the cosmos. The heavens resounded with music beyond music, and the universe itself bowed in reverence. And thus, the great journey of the Pandavas ended not in the ashes of war, nor the halls of kings, but in eternal peace, where love, loyalty, and dharma shine forever.